Chapter 1196. Enough, enough. Yunshi stammered, raising his hand to indicate that the price was really too high. He didn't really mean to keep it and not sell it. Rather, as a hero-rank bread artisan, it was a disgrace for him to not earn a single penny after advancing to hero-ranked. No choice. The girls who eat the golden cream bread he made are either Hydra the water god, Cassina the battle god, White Lotus, Red Lotus, the Golden Crow Princess, or the Starwings Knights. He can't ask these girls for money. Besides, after advancing to the hero-rank bread maker every day, he has a fixed amount of void-made bread every day, so he unconsciously forgot that his profession can also make money. It was not until he had contact with the jewel store's Miss Childhood friend as the Silver Dragon Ash that she willingly bought this kind of magic bread, which made Yunshi realize. Ah, so the 4th grade magic bread is valuable like this. True, this kind of magic food, he only saw it in the illustrated book before and never encountered it in the mortal world. He never expected that the golden cream bread he made by hand would be so valuable. A price of 100 crystals means that just casually eating it is equivalent to the price of a garden mansion in the prosperous area of the Endless God's domain. In the last days of Water God's world, Hydra the water god and the 3 water god high priests ate a lot of the golden cream bread he made himself. If we calculate again, Yunshi, who realized it late, found out that the divine arrow wine given to him by Hydra the water god was actually so luxurious and wasteful. Feeding himself and his childhood friend, White Lotus, Red Lotus, the Golden Crow Princess, and the girls of the Starwings Knights with a 4th-tier golden cream bread had become his habit. This is burning money. Yunshi couldn't help but laugh and cry as he realized that he was even more extravagant than Yunhe thought, Child Sanquan, and his wastefulness was nothing compared to them. Fallen, I have fallen, Yunshi. Don't you make the girls happy without bread? So, should he give them gemstones, flowers, or maybe a house? After thinking about it, Yunshi realized that giving them the bread he made himself was better. Ah, so I have become a wealthy person without even knowing it. It wasn't until Elphilis wanted to buy his bread that Yunshi truly realized what a huge leap it was from being a mortal to a hero-ranked breadsmith. The value of the bread sold in his own bakery probably didn't even amount to a small piece of the 4th-tier bread he casually made now. How much do you want? Selling his own bread as a product to his childhood friend, Yunshi felt a bit strange. But he could tell that Elphilis really wanted these breads. For him, it was something he could make every day, so it didn't matter how much he gave to Elphilis. If she asked for it, he would even give her the limited edition bread that is normally reserved for the top-ranking members, except for those few that need to be kept for emergencies. However, he couldn't do that because there was no way to explain to Elphilis how someone she barely knew like him could give away bread like that. How much do you have? Elphilis looked at Yunshi with surprise. Somehow, his expression told her that he had a lot of these rare magic breads. Even as the young miss of the 10 Leaves Alliance, she only carried a small box of Magic Bear cookies with her, which was just a strategic reserve for a regular-sized team. More rare and delicious than magic cookies, the magic bread is even more rare. Maybe this silver dragon has a lot of it. I can sell it to you for $50 today and probably $100 tomorrow. Yunshi counted the stock of bread in his bakery and his own magic power limit. $150 in 2 days wouldn't be a problem at all. Judging from Elphilis's expression, it seemed like she wanted as much as possible. This was his first opening as a hero-ranked bread master. I'll take all of it. Elphilis didn't hesitate at all, without even negotiating the price. No matter how you look at it, this was a very profitable deal. You could even say that she was taking a huge advantage. The value of a magic bread and the value of 100 magic breads are completely different. She could even infer that the silver dragon ash in front of her could sell even more magic bread. This was truly an unexpected joy. In a world like Sia's, which was in a period of declining magic, to be able to buy strategic reserve-level magic food, or something like that was beyond imagination. Here you go. Yunshi didn't doubt Elphilis's trustworthiness and directly gave her 50 golden cream bread from the storage in his bakery. Because the bread storage limit is only 100 pieces, these 50 pieces were recently added. The extra portions were mostly given to Ein, Adley, and the girls from the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Looking back now, the cost of feeding these girls was really expensive. But apart from these breads, Yunshi doesn't have much else to offer. Money, like this thing, basically lost its meaning to Yunshi after entering the White Lotus Sword Palace. At least the currency used in the White Lotus Sword domain is completely useless. These are leaves worth 6,000 crystals. Elphyllis, with shining eyes, looked at the table filled with golden cream bread and took out a few palm-sized crystal leaves. A huge amount of magic flows within these crystal leaves. That is the blessing bestowed by the golden fairies, leaves from a 1,000-year-old golden tree. One leaf is equivalent to 1,000 crystals. Most of the kings in Endless God's Domain countries don't have as many of these leaves as cash. 6,000 crystals, such a heavy weight. Yunshi's golden creamy bread was so valuable. Elphyllis reached out her small hand and pinched the soft and delicious golden creamy bread. It still had a little bit of warmth, as if it had just come out of the oven. The familiar aroma and tempting taste would make even the princesses of Western God's Domain scream, even if it wasn't magical food. Ah, it's so wonderful to be alive in this world. If little She were here, they would definitely praise these golden creamy breads. I really wish I could have tea with little She again and chat about the latest news in Endless God's Domain. I've decided I'll do my best to defeat Huahua, even if it's just to let little She eat these breads sooner. Chapter 1197. Yum. Elphyllis's teeth sank into the crispy and soft golden creamy bread, with a face full of happiness. Leaving the familiar White Lotus Sword domain, Elphyllis ventured alone into the unfamiliar world of Sia. Without any help from the outside, she was able to endure all of this. The only thing she couldn't bear was not being able to eat her beloved little She's bread anymore. It was a cruel torture. Who would have thought that just when she had given up hope and focused on building the Babylon Sky Tower, the Kingdom Shield would bring her such an unexpected surprise? She had already eaten a piece of creamy golden bread that would have satisfied any lady. So why wouldn't her hand listen? Stop, stop! If she continued like this, she could never become a knowledgeable and well-mannered young lady. The golden, fragrant bread with its creamy aroma seemed to have a magical power. Elphyllis couldn't help but reach out her little hand, and then she let out a sigh of delight. Sob, sob. This isn't right. Why was her body obedient, even though her heart was rejecting it? Luckily, her beloved little She wasn't here. If he saw her being so greedy, her gentle and refined image as a jeweler's daughter would completely crumble. So adorable. Yunshi looked at Elphyllis, lost in the joy of eating the golden bread he had made himself, and liked her even more. Actually, he didn't always like making bread at first. When learning how to make bread, every step from selecting the ingredients to baking it just right requires a lot of focus. Otherwise, the final product will have flaws. When he was little, he was just like any other ordinary child. He naturally loved being active and playing hero games with his friends, rather than making bread or anything like that. So, when exactly did he stop playing those childish hero games? Well, when he thinks back, it seems that it was when Huahua, the big demon king, suddenly appeared and defeated a group of boys who aspired to become heroes. She then publicly declared that She belonged to her. After learning a harsh lesson in reality, none of his friends dreamed of being heroes anymore. She wasn't actually abused by Huahua, but the power difference between him and Huahua meant that there was no need for him to personally try. After that, he understood that he wouldn't become a hero and decided to honestly inherit his family's bakery, making delicious bread with his own hands to share with his childhood friends. Seeing the satisfaction on their faces, She discovered a new joy. Compared to fighting and killing, world peace is definitely better. Originally, this small town didn't need any fighting professions, as all dangerous monsters were kept outside the wilderness area by a 50-meter-high wall. This is also a characteristic of the majority of mortal worlds in Endless God's Domain. It's not known where it originated, but God's Domain is divided into the Mortal Zone, the Wilderness Zone, and the True Elite Zone, as if it has become a common structure. Most mortals will never come into contact with the hero-ranked world. They can live their whole lives peacefully in the mortal world and even have the opportunity to travel to the star domain through the star bridge that only leads to the mortal world, living their lives without worries. However, that is only the appearance in the peaceful environment of endless God's domain. Once certain disasters or human catastrophes occur beyond the control of the rulers of God's domain, the mortal world will suffer devastating blows. Mortals ranked third, the elites at the pinnacle of the mortal field, also enjoy this situation. Only those discovered during the annual selection who have the potential to surpass the mortal rank will be sent to the true elite zone. In terms of numbers, the intelligent beings in the elite zone may not even make up 1% of the mortal world, but this is actually the place that truly determines the fate of the world. For species that don't follow the civilized system, there are extensive wilderness areas designated. In fact, the wilderness area is often the largest mysterious area in the various gods' domains, where there are often monsters with such powerful strength that they cannot be restrained. Only a few powerful civilizations, known as God's domain, have the ability to conquer and transform the wilderness area, turning the entire God's domain into a cradle of civilization. On the other hand, the whole God's domain is a natural environment, inhabited by various powerful creatures. The Eastern God's domain, especially the mysterious Kunlun God's domain, represents this. Before leaving the town, the bakery was Yunshi's whole world, and his childhood friend could potentially be his future spouse. Until one day, when the brilliance of the stars fell, Yunshi discovered that he suddenly had 4 terrifying ex-girlfriends and his life was now counting down. There are too many tears, better not talk about it. Compared to being chaste and having his ex-girlfriend's curses hanging over him, to the point where he doesn't even dare to admit his childhood friend, Yunshi wishes to go back in time, to the leisurely days spent with Phyllis. Those good days are gone and will never return. At least, now he can happily watch her enjoy the cute expressions on her face as she eats the golden cream bread he made with his own hands. This is the happiest time for Yunshi after becoming an advanced hero-ranked baker. If possible, he really hopes this afternoon tea time can last longer. Awu! Phyllis could feel Yunshi's gaze, filled with a bit of curiosity and admiration, like the loving look one gives to their first love. I'm sorry, you're still too young. We're not a good match. Phyllis had prepared her response for when Yunshi confessed. The problem was he didn't say those 4 words, I like you. He just looked at her with gentle eyes, leaving Phyllis completely unsure of what to do. What should she do with the kindness card that she had prepared, but couldn't give out? Awu! Caught in her dilemma, Phyllis absent-mindedly reached out her small, white hand and picked up the 3rd piece of golden cream bread. Valued at 120 crystals, this 4th-tier bread would be enough to buy a garden mansion in the bustling city center of endless God's domain. It became an extravagant dessert for Miss Phyllis to release her stress in the 10 Leaves Alliance. By the time Phyllis noticed something was wrong, the 3rd garden mansion was already gone. Oh, this! It's just too delicious. Phyllis, looking at the curious silver dragon, wished she could just disappear into the ground right now. Why couldn't she control her own hands? And this mouth, tearing, don't want this greedy mouth anymore. This hand too, want to chop it, chop it. Chapter 1198. With the arrival of Ludwig XII, the most powerful military nation on the continent, as the turning point, representatives of the other countries on the Sea continent gradually arrived at the central mountains of the continent with their elite armies. Hey-ha! Riding a large number of black saber-toothed tigers, carrying rare weapons resembling boomerangs, with handsome and powerful men or women. They're the wilderness rangers of the Northern Alliance. They excel at taming the saber-toothed tigers roaming in the wilderness forest, growing up and running in the wild with their own saber-toothed tigers. They are one of the few super elite forces of the Northern Alliance. In terms of mobility, they even surpass the magic armor of the Leviathan Empire. A guerrilla unit composed of a large number of wilderness rangers was once one of the top 3 special forces on the entire continent. Boom rumble! The massive war elephants stomped around, representing the forces from the southern continent. They had a different battle system compared to the old continent, as representatives of the new continent. The heavily armored elephant soldiers were a unique type of troops from the southern continent. Their strength was comparable to that of ogres. The war elephants charged fearlessly into battle, believing in sacrifice for their cause. They were a special type of soldiers exclusive to the southern continent. The various long-range weapons mounted on the war elephants were war tools specially developed by the southern continent. Before the magic armor unit of the Leviathan Empire appeared, they were recognized as the world's first land force. Besides the difficult training of armored war elephants, the heavy armored war elephant corps surpassed the knight orders of the old continent in all aspects. However, due to the long sea distance separating the two continents, there had never been a battle between the two knight orders. Lastly, there were the Black Crusaders from the West Continent. These heavily armed knights were mostly descendants of the noble class from the Old Continent who had ventured to the New Continent during the Divine Era, and they had formed a certain religion during their colonization journey. With the Black Cross as their symbol, they gathered around a few priests dressed in black robes, their faces expressionless. These priests were actually inheritors of the ancient warlock bloodline, but they now referred to their spells as divine magic, signifying that it was a gift from the gods. Among the 3 known continents inhabited by humans, the Sia continent dominated the world as the largest in size and with the highest population, undoubtedly occupying the center of the entire world. The southern continent and western continent together make up about 1/3 the size of Sia continent. According to historical research, they all split from Sia continent. The reason can be traced back to the giants, who were causing trouble for no reason at all. They had a war that caused the continents to drift, splitting Sia continent into 3 pieces. It was because of the trouble caused by the giants that the Dragon Clan, who lived at the top of the world, couldn't tolerate it anymore and finally destroyed the greatest source of unrest in the world. Unlike the regular human soldiers from Sia continent, the human armies from other continents have some mixed bloodlines from different races. However, most of them have integrated with humans, with only a small part of their bodies still bearing traces of monsters. Compared to the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order of Sia Kingdom, these armies from the new continents were even more surprised. Not long ago, when Queen Sia established the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, merchants from both continents also bought qualified girls from their own continents and sent them over. However, due to the long distance, there weren't many merchants who were able to achieve this feat in the entire Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. There were less than 10 girls from other continents, and most of them had no connection to their birth countries. For the countries of these new continents, since they sold these girls, they naturally had no relationship with their own countries anymore. So when the commanders of these new continent armies saw the diverse mix of races in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, they were even more surprised than the people of Sia continent. They knew how much controversy and bloodshed there had been to incorporate mixed blood breeds into their army. And even now there are signs of unrest in the army. All of this doesn't exist in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. All members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, infused with the divine energy of the Holy Silver Dragon, instinctively have a sense of identity that transcends race and background. Many girls were initially sent to the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order by their families as pawns to spy on the secret of the Sia Kingdom's divine artifacts. These noble families, and even the king, were eager to know what secrets were hidden in the ancient Divine Era Tower. At first, these girls hesitated to provide information about the Divine Era Tower that their families had sent, and Ein showed no intention of stopping them. However, the chiefs of these families soon realized that there was no regret medicine in this world. The girls who were sent to the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order betrayed, one by one. Well, it may be inappropriate to describe it as betrayal, but they sincerely joined the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. The information about the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order will still be sent, but every word and sentence is filled with pride, confidence, and dreams of a beautiful future. Prince Ash is so pretty. Today, I ate the most delicious bread in the world. Father, you can't even imagine how it tasted. If I can't eat bread from the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order in the future, I will die. Dad, let my little sister join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order too. Her talent is even higher than mine, and she can surpass me quickly. I guess she has at least 50 seconds of talent. Great leader. Thank you for adopting me, who came from a poor background. This is my gratitude. I don't want to go back to the organization anymore. In the past, I had no choice, but now I want to be a good girl and become an outstanding knight of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Many forces who bear ill intentions towards the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order were left dumbfounded by the confident and happy information that was twisted in some unknown way. Why does it feel like someone kicked a dog to see meat-filled buns? Why did these girls change so quickly? They're just like daughters who can't come back home once they get married. There were some people who wanted to fight against the girls who seemed to have betrayed their own power, but when facing the Leviathan faction led by Sarmanda, Immerse, and Heidi, who had advanced to the hero rank level, all organizations were too scared to do anything. It's not good to be scared, but this is a time when the magic power is declining. Even the Leviathan Empire, which has hero rank knights, only has a dozen or so. 3 hero rank monsters, an invincible troll, a Lamia priestess with a magic eye, and the princess of the mermaid clan all came together. Every organization had to tremble. They couldn't win the fight, so they had to surrender. They weren't knights from the divine era, and no one wanted to fight against monsters of that rank. Chapter 1199 in this way. The girls who originally belonged to different powers and had different tasks when entering the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order gradually came together as a team. With a strange divine artifact at its center, along with some kind of unusual emotions that could barely be described, the entire Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order was growing at a speed that humans in this era could not understand. And now, their powers were slowly starting to show in front of the people of this world. Kaka, long time no see. Nini, are you doing well in that Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order? In the Northern Alliance's Wild Ranger Troop, many elite warriors from the north curiously looked at the 2 girls who seemed almost completely transformed. They are the representatives of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order and the Northern Alliance, known as the Wilderness Brides. They recently left the wilderness area and officially joined the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. In a way, they were actually sold by the Wild Ranger Troop. Due to the harsh environment, even though they were daughters of chieftains, they were still young, and every chieftain had many daughters. Eventually, they were sold by the Alliance to wealthy merchants for a large sum of money. Of course, it wouldn't be called sold, but rather a negotiation. The currency used in Sia's world was not very appealing to the Northern Alliance. In exchange, they received a large number of sturdy livestock, including cold-resistant long-haired cows and sheep capable of weaving wool blankets. For the people of the Northern Alliance, these livestock were the most valuable assets. Since they were sold, it's like they have been married off, and there is no intention for them to come back, as far as the Northern Alliance is concerned. Unlike the prosperous Sia Kingdom and Leviathan Empire, the Northern Alliance has limited resources and can only focus on cultivating their own elite troops. Inheriting the bloodline of fierce warriors, every one of them is a born big eater. Their father was worried about not being able to support them, but then a merchant from the Sia Kingdom came and offered a large sum of money to buy them, and it was a perfect match. The girls themselves didn't really object to this transaction. After all, the requirement to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order is that it must be voluntary and without any use of force. They exchanged themselves for livestock that could feed the tribe's children, so the Wilderness Brides were mentally prepared to not return home. No one expected that just over a month later, the Wilderness Bride who had already been married would reunite with her family. "Oh, everyone is doing well. We're doing great," said Nini, wearing a brand new fur coat, which is a treasure that only the highest-ranking elders in the tribe can wear. "Here, the weapons are good, and the food is delicious." Kaka vigorously waved the large hunting spear she had just finished making. Underneath the Divine Era Tower's lake, there are not only perfect gemstones, but also a large amount of minerals that have been purified by the magical influence of the Divine Era Tower, making them the best in the whole world of Sia. With Ein's permission, a few members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order who own ironworking businesses started helping their fellow members to create well-crafted weapons using these high-quality minerals. The weapons of Nini, Kaka, and the entire Wilderness Bride group are all newly acquired. Not only do they perfectly suit their preferences, but their quality is also incredibly impressive. Moreover, when Ayn allowed the creation of these weapons, she used the water from the underground palace's grand bath. By mixing the water infused with the spiritual energy of the dragons and the essence of all members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, the quenching process for weapon creation produced unbelievable results. Each weapon crafted in this way carries the familiar essence of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order and becomes a weapon only they can use. These high-quality weapons emit a faint glow even during the day. Even those who know nothing about weapons can tell that they are extraordinary. For the wilderness adventurers, a good weapon is like half of their life. When they see the glow of the weapons owned by Nini and Kaka, their eyes widen in astonishment. They had never heard of such treatment when joining the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. If Ayn used these weapons to recruit people instead of relying on the mysterious divine era magic, there would probably be many more people wanting to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. That's definitely the case for the Northern Alliance. The Northern Alliance is a loose but powerful alliance that relies on nomadic and fishing livelihoods. Due to a lack of skilled craftsmen, even though they always find high-quality minerals, they can only sell them at a low price to merchants from the south. It's extremely difficult to get a good weapon. Many of the large boomerang weapons used by the Wilderness Rangers have been passed down through generations. Each inheritor of a boomerang vows to treat it as their most important treasure, even placing it above their own wife. Now, as the Wilderness Rangers look at the heavy spears behind Nini and Kaka, their mouths water, just like a reckless youth seeing a breathtaking beauty for the first time. How many animals would it take to trade for a weapon of this level? Look at the radiance and the sharpness of the diamond spearhead, as if it could easily pierce through an enemy's bones. And the entire shaft of the spear is made of metal. It's extravagant, too extravagant. The same amount of metal could be used to create 10 spearheads like this. The shaft could have been made of readily available white waxwood, which is both flexible and abundant. It has always been a standard for the Northern Alliance. Carrying this god weapon on one's back would surely bring pure delight, even when sleeping. They haven't seen weapons of this quality before, except for the tribal chief, and only the tribal chief of a large tribe would have one or two of these genuine god-level weapons. These weapons are symbols of the big tribes, with each one tracing back to legends from the divine era, making them eligible to be promoted to god weapons, ancestral totems. A tribe may lose all its cattle, sheep, and territory, and be left in hardship, but as long as the ancestral totem weapon remains, there is still a chance for a comeback. On the other hand, no matter how many pastures, cattle, or tribespeople you have, if the tribe doesn't possess an ancestral totem-level weapon, you cannot rightfully claim to be a major tribe. In times like these, tribes on the rise often form alliances with small tribes that possess ancestral totem weapons, benefiting both sides. Nini and Kaka's tribe, not being a major tribe of the Northern Alliance, doesn't have a single ancestral totem weapon. Chapter 1200 Highly skilled craftsmen are treasures for any country and are treated with great respect. No matter how good the offer from the tribal alliance, they would not choose to live in the harsh and cold wilderness of the north. Even daring merchants may smuggle some high-quality weapons to the Northern Alliance, but the weapons of higher quality, each bearing the nation's imprint, would never end up in the hands of merchants. The ancestral totem weapon inherited from the divine era is the highest level weapon that the tribes living in the northern wilderness can possess. As for things like god weapons, those are all legends of the divine era. In this period of magic-tide decline, heroes who can wield the power of god weapons basically don't exist. Even the king of the mighty Sia kingdom, Ayn's father, who died in battle, didn't possess his own god weapon. In the history of Sia's world, there are only 20 recorded god weapons. 12 of them are constellation gods' weapons, which means that in the entire history of Sia's world, besides the 12 constellation gods' weapons, there have only been 8 other god weapons that were later born. These god weapons, having gone through a long time and countless people's belief and praises during the divine era, and influenced by the magic environment of the divine era, finally completed their advancement. After the end of the Divine Era, there have been no new god weapons appearing, and most of the previously born god weapons can only be regarded as spiritual totems stored in the treasure vault, with symbolic meaning far greater than practical meaning. Elphilis gave all 8 constellation gods' weapons to Yun. She is a price for their alliance. These collectibles have little significance in conquering the world, which is also one of the reasons. In the period of magic tide decline, even the legendary god weapons cannot be inherited by anyone. In comparison, these weapons called ancestral totems are not considered god weapons, but they are highly valued in practical combat. They are the preferred weapons of the strongest heroes in this world. Compared to already advanced god weapons, these ancestral totem weapons, which are in the stage of faith gathering, have the potential to make them famous as heroes. If these ancestral totem weapons can take the final step in their hands, they will become fully compatible god weapons for themselves, although that is a miracle with an almost zero probability. It's not difficult to understand why the Wanderers of the Wilderness are so envious of the weapons behind Nini and Kaka. These are the embryos of future god weapons, and they are enough to become treasures passed down through generations by a large clan. Yet, they are carried so casually on their backs. Moreover, from their natural and perfect alignment with these weapons, it is evident that these weapons are tailor-made for them. The Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order is willing to invest so much and use such precious metals to create weapons of this level for them. The value of this weapon alone is enough to buy 10 daughters of chieftains like them. The bloodline of a berserker is not rare for the tribes of the wilderness. In fact, awakening this bloodline often causes great concern for the tribes. The brave warrior-to-be, a man, worked hard to provide enough food for the future. He wanted to become the leader of the warriors. The women of the tribe were expected to get married and become someone else's wife in the future. So, it didn't make sense to spend a lot of money on training them to become warriors. Even if they were the chief's daughters, they couldn't have enough food. Just surviving without starving was already considered a good thing for the tribe. Once they grew up, they would become wilderness brides. This title sounded nice, but in reality, it meant they would be abandoned in the wilderness. The strongest among them would overcome various difficulties and join the ranks of the wilderness adventurers to prove themselves. The requirement to join the wilderness adventurers was to tame a saber-toothed tiger and show that you were strong in the wilderness. Most of them quietly disappeared into the wilderness. No one knew what happened to them, nor did anyone want to know. The wilderness, where there was a scarcity of food, was so cold-hearted. Joining the human knight order came with the luxurious ancestral totem weapons. It seemed even more abundant than in the wilderness. This was completely different from the style of the wilderness tribe. Kaka, come and play a game? Soon, someone started challenging the leader of the wilderness bride, who was recruited by the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Kaka, one of the future members that the wilderness adventurer had anticipated. Coming from a medium-sized tribe, Kaka showed exceptional fighting talent from a young age and was considered an excellent wilderness bride in the making. If it weren't for meeting the human merchant caravan with a large group of cattle and sheep before turning 16, she would have completed the wilderness trial a year later and become one of the squad leaders of the current wilderness adventurer team. The one now challenging Kaka is her sister, who is also a wilderness bride from the same tribe and is now the captain of the wilderness adventurer team. The two sisters have an age difference of about 8 years, thanks to their strong and robust father. Their oldest sister is almost 40, the youngest sister is only 6, and they even have a new sister who hasn't been born yet. Men with strong bloodlines naturally have the power to marry and have offspring with more women. This is a recognized truth among the tribes living in the wilderness. Okay, sister. Kaka nodded and took off the fur, which symbolized her identity, and was a bit out of season. This fur coat is the proof of her being the leader of the wilderness bride group. It is made of extremely precious polar bear skin and is 1 level higher than the one Nini is wearing. Because the snow bear lives in a remote icy land where humans rarely go, and it is one of the few magical creatures that can use extraordinary powers during the period of magic decline, its fur is highly valuable in the entire northern wilderness area. Similar to the ancestral totem weapon, only the chiefs of the largest tribes or the few highly respected elders in the wilderness can wear this fur, which can be passed down for several generations. The snow bear fur is a symbol of status in the northern region due to its warming effect. It is both practical and magnificent. The fur that Kaka is wearing is one of the collections from the Divine Era Tower. She obtained it as a reward after ranking in the top 10 in the unique trials of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. At the time, she was allowed to enter the Divine Era Tower warehouse to choose her reward. At first sight, she saw this high-quality snow bear skin and personally made it into this coat. The wilderness brides are so versatile that they can survive even in the harshest conditions. Because if they didn't know these things, they would have to undergo the wilderness trials alone and would die. Well, it looks like you've eaten well. The older sister looked at the increasingly plump chest of her younger sister and nodded with joy. Having a large chest is the perfect proof of being a wilderness bride, symbolizing that they have overcome the harsh wilderness and become girls blessed by the wild. Chapter 12:01 To measure the combat power of the wilderness bride. You could basically tell just by the size of her chest. This is not a talent like the witches in Witch God's domain, where the bigger the chest, the greater the magical power. It is simply a result of natural selection. A wilderness bride with a large chest proves that she can hunt enough food during the wilderness trial, allowing her body to develop well. It is also beneficial to have a large amount of fat reserves in the wilderness environment. The bloodline of the berserker gives wilderness brides extraordinary recovery ability, and they need more food than ordinary people. Eating well and having a healthy chest is the symbol for wilderness brides to prove themselves. By proving themselves as wilderness brides, they are also known as pearls of the wilderness. Their status has risen from being a burden sent to the wilderness by the tribe to becoming respected warriors. The current Kaka and Nini, by the standards of the Northern Alliance, have large chests, tall figures, and come with a generous dowry. They are the desired marriage partners for any tribal warriors. As Kaka's sister, Kallian, the captain of the Wilderness Ranger Detachment invited to the underground cemetery gathering, is naturally very happy to see her sister's growth. She is only 24 years old this year, which is 8 years older than Kaka. In a way, she is almost like her half-mother. Even though they are half-sisters with the same father, she has always seen Kaka as her successor and has been working hard to train her since they were young. She often hides a small portion of the dried meat she hunted in the wilderness. At night, she rides her saber-toothed tiger and secretly delivers it to her sister's tent. Like Kaka, she awakened the bloodline of a fierce warrior at an early age. She never truly had a full meal during her teenage years. It was only after entering the wilderness and experiencing many cruel trials, sacrificing her own eye, did she grow into a qualified wilderness bride and step by step become the captain of the Wilderness Ranger Corps. Because she knew how terrible hunger can be, she hoped that Kaka could have a better life than her and have enough strength before officially entering the wilderness. No one would have imagined that Kaka and Nini would be noticed by merchants from the Kingdom of Sia and directly bought and sent to the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Officially, these daughters of chieftains represent the Northern Tribal Alliance, joining the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order and pledge their loyalty to Queen Sia. In reality, these girls who awakened the bloodline of fierce warriors were mostly abandoned by their respective tribes. As the so-called wilderness brides, they were sacrifices offered by their tribes to the wilderness. If they can complete the trials of the wilderness and prove themselves to be favored by the wilderness, it would be a glory for their tribe. If they disappear in the wild, the people of the tribe wouldn't be too sad. Born in the wilderness, passing away in the wilderness, it is the fate of the people living in this harsh land. However, no one ever expected that their fate would be changed by a person, a knight's order that had never appeared in this world before. Come, let me see how much you've grown. As the youngest captain of the Wilderness Ranger Corps, Kallian, who shares the same fierce warrior blood as Kaka, and whose chest is slightly smaller than Kaka's, held the exclusive weapon of the Wilderness Ranger Corps, the Moonblade. This large boomerang has a complex transforming structure and is the only Divine Era standard weapon inherited by the Northern Tribal region. Each one can be traced back to that glorious era and is the pinnacle of cold weapon research in the Divine Era. At first glance, it just looks like an enlarged boomerang structure, but in reality, it is completely different. This is a weapon that can be disassembled. When the circular moon blade is taken apart, it becomes a pair of melee double blades. When combined together, it becomes a long-range weapon that can be thrown and automatically returns. The metal used to make these moon blades is a masterpiece from the Divine Era. The successors have lost the blueprints and tools to make these weapons, so they can only repair them and cannot reproduce these standard weapons from the Divine Era. Each moon blade is an important asset registered by the Northern Alliance, and the number of direct line troops of the Wilderness Rangers is equal to the number of existing moon blades. To be frank, the importance of the moon blade, for most of the Wilderness Rangers, is truly more important than their own lives. Many wilderness wanderers remain unmarried for life, and the legacy of the moon blade is everything to them. The moon blade, passed down from generation to generation, is the pride of all wilderness wanderers. These moon blades have never let the wanderers down and are fearsome assassination weapons in the era of cold weapons. Remote attack in boomerang mode. Close combat in dual blade slaughter mode. With the high mobility and explosive power of the saber-toothed tiger, as well as the special ability to march at night, as long as they don't confront heavily armored cavalry on the Great Plains, no legion on the continent can withstand the night raid of the wilderness wanderers. Until the appearance of magic armor, the myth of the wilderness wanderer army came to an end. Even so, for forces without magic armor, the teams formed by the wilderness wanderers are still deadly weapons, having completely crushed Leviathan Empire's logistical forces more than once, leaving the powerful magic armor isolated and eventually surrounded and annihilated. I'm here! There is no mercy in the battles between sisters. Riding on her saber-toothed tiger companion, Kellyanne charged directly towards Kaka, who had removed her polar bear coat, revealing her graceful figure. The moon blade switched to close combat mode, emitting a cold reflection in the sunlight, faintly showing traces of dark red. That was the mark of killings left by the elite moon blade, a symbol of the blood remaining from the targets hunted by this powerful sword. Kaka held onto his spear, facing the charging moon blade knight, as steady as an unmoving mountain. As a representative of the Wilderness Bride group in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, Kaka was very silent and reserved, compared to the enthusiastic Nini, who was as vibrant as an icy mountain in the north. However, she was strong, the strongest among all members of the Wilderness Bride group. Faced with the impact released by the divine artifact, she always managed to endure till the very end. Even if her snow-white face turned pink due to the intense stimulation, her eyes were still radiant. The trait of the dragon's spiritual energy growing stronger in the face of resistance made the patient and enduring Ice Mountain girl even stronger. Even though she had never won a single time, the benefits she gained each time, she gritted her teeth and persevered were the most among the entire Wilderness Bride group. At this moment, standing before the former tribe's most outstanding Wilderness Bride, the target she had once admired, Kaka held a spear with utmost stability, like a bowl of water that wouldn't create any ripples even if something was placed upon it. Chapter 12:02 The Charge of the Saber-Toothed Tiger was entirely different from the grandeur of the war elephant. With their furry paws that have special cushioning, as well as their ability to sneak like meat-eating animals, saber-toothed tigers can sprint silently. This is one of the reasons why the Wilderness Rangers became the most outstanding assassination unit on the continent. Often, it's only after the saber-toothed tigers charge into the camp and start killing that the attacked army realizes their presence. Unlike war horses that can only charge in a straight line, different from war elephants, saber-toothed tigers can change direction while running at high speeds. They can even leap over 3-meter-tall fences and walls and run on the upper floors of buildings, almost ignoring any obstacles on the terrain. With extremely high mobility, agile and explosive bodies, and apart from having a big appetite and a fierce temperament, saber-toothed tigers are perfect as human mounts. The only problem is the high difficulty of taming saber-toothed tigers. These proud creatures automatically go to the wilderness to find a mate during their annual mating season before returning after mating. It is impossible to raise a saber-toothed tiger cub and wait for it to grow up. It takes over 30 years to raise one, and the amount of food required is astonishing. These massive feline creatures have a lifespan of over 100 years, living longer than most wilderness rangers. Humans, even the most outstanding wilderness rangers, have a limited period of strength and power, known as the Golden Period, which ranges from 18 to 45 years old. After that, they must retire. This is a limitation of the human race itself. A saber-toothed tiger can live for up to 150 years, showing signs of weakness only in the last 10 years. They often accompany more than 5 generations of wilderness rangers. Many of the saber-toothed tigers currently in service are from the great-grandfather generation of their owners. This is not difficult to understand. The Wilderness Bride joined the trials of the wilderness rangers by taming a saber-toothed tiger. Taming a saber-toothed tiger is the highest proof of her own strength. The saber-toothed tiger, tamed by Kaka's sister Callian, is much stronger and more powerful than others. It is a young saber-toothed tiger that has only been in its youth for a few years, which is the most fierce and aggressive period. This mighty saber-toothed tiger made Callian lose an eye, but it also earned her the respect of the entire wilderness rangers. She became a team captain almost as soon as she joined the team, and was soon promoted to a squad captain. She has already been nominated to be the next vice captain. Among the wilderness rangers who came to the underground cemetery this time, she is one of the top 3 experts. The top 2 are the hero-ranked rangers from the northern tribes, who are almost 100 years old and are living legends. It can be said that below the hero-ranked rangers, Callian is recognized as the top expert of the wilderness rangers, all because of her saber-toothed tiger mount. However, Callian has a very puzzled feeling this time. It seems that when her companion starts to sprint, it is far from the smoothness and fierceness as usual. As a comrade in arms fighting side by side, she knows the speed and rhythm of her saber-toothed tiger's sprint very well, but this time the charge has not been smooth from the beginning. What appears to others as a fast and agile charge, the rhythm was actually chaotic right from the start. Holding the moon blade, Callian gently poked the tiger's belly, a friendly gesture to ask what was wrong with their companion. In response, the tiger trembled and tensed up in distress. It felt like encountering a monstrous creature, an archenemy. Impossible, Callian frowned. The tiger was the ruler at the top of the food chain in the wilderness. Even the occasional polar bear that emerged from the icy lands couldn't outrun the tiger, despite the tiger being physically weaker than this extraordinary monster. With its ability to run at high speeds in any terrain, the tiger was inherently unbeatable and truly the ruler of the wild. To defeat the tiger, even the Wilderness Bride with her warrior bloodline would need to pay a great price and a bit of luck. She had tamed her companion at the cost of an eye, trapping it in an inescapable trap and spending 7 days and nights to earn its respect and establish a bloodline bond. At this moment, the tiger's unnatural trembling seemed to convey to its comrade that there was an unbeatable monster over there. The monster, who was her sister, recently left the wild land and was sold to Kaka in the Sia Kingdom. Just as they spoke, the saber-toothed tiger reached its highest speed, and Callian instinctively swung her moon blade sideways towards Kaka. Kaka took a deep breath and let out a roar that no human could make. It was a roar that shook the earth. It was a chilling presence that shattered the opponent's soul. It was a sound that made the wilderness travelers and their saber-toothed tiger companions, who were hundreds of meters away, explode and almost stop their heartbeat. Callian's mount, being at the forefront, immediately slowed down, rolling uncontrollably, completely losing control of its body. Twitching panic. It was the instinctual memory of all beasts living in Sia's world towards the bloodline of the ruler at the top of the world pyramid, an inheritance that cannot disappear no matter how many generations pass. In the divine era, any powerful beast was food in front of that race. Saber-toothed tiger, polar bear, python, war elephant, antelope, in a world where the strong prey on the weak, apart from the giant race. Any other race can easily be hunted by that race. The wilderness overlord saber-toothed tiger, compared to that race, is not much stronger than a kitten. The proud speed and explosive power to the race that dominates the sky is just a joke. In order to survive, one can only hope that when encountering that race, it is not hungry, so it can play and pretend to be a cute little kitten. Meeting that race and lying down like a small kitten and exposing its belly is an unforgettable memory in the bloodline of the saber-toothed tiger clan. At first, the aura on Kaka wasn't very obvious, but when she made her move and truly unleashed her war cry, that memory engraved in her bloodline suddenly awakened in all the saber-toothed tigers, including the young and spirited one under Callian. Among them, of course, included the young and spirited saber-toothed tiger under Callian. With Kaka's roar, the saber-toothed tiger that had been sprinting at high speed just moments ago was directly shaken away, rolling several rounds consecutively. Callian, who jumped away at the critical moment, looked in astonishment at her unruly comrade in arms rolling on its back with all four paws up in the air, unable to understand what had happened. Chapter 12:03 More than just Kalian's close comrades were scared and crouched down by Kaka's shout. As one of the girls with the highest affinity with a certain silver dragon in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, the slight aura of dragons released by Kaka directly paralyzed half of the Wild Rangers' saber-toothed tiger mounts. If this were a battlefield where both sides fought to the death, this shout would have disabled half of the continent's strongest assassination force. Before Callian could react, Kaka had already swung her spear and launched a fierce attack towards her sister. Defensive is not a concept in the dictionary of a berserker's bloodline. None of the Wild Rangers wore steel armor. They loved armor made from the skins of various beasts. In order to improve the maneuverability of their saber-toothed tigers, they didn't even wear underwear. It is said that the most primitive Wild Ranger force didn't even need clothes. The pure bloodline of a berserker is its greatest weapon. It is a similar bloodline developed by humans after witnessing the ultimate land forces of the Leviathan faction troll clan. The Wild Warrior's bloodline, unlike the popular communication-type sorcery bloodline, is a masterpiece created by the mages during the Divine Era. The fearless Wild Warrior who unlocks their own bloodline is always at the peak of morale. Even if the opponent is a giant dragon, they will charge forward. Apart from the downside of going berserk, they are considered a perfect ace unit. While the power of magic spells faded during the period of the declining magic tide, the Wild Warrior bloodline, which doesn't rely much on magic, persevered in the northern wilderness according to the law of survival of the fittest. Even though awakening this bloodline requires food 10 times more than a normal person, it is still a worthwhile trade for tribes in need of great strength. Callian and Kaka are girls who have fully awakened their Wild Warrior bloodline. As the captain of the Wilderness Ranger unit, Callian's combat experience and skills are overwhelmingly powerful compared to Kaka. If they had grown up normally, the three Kakas would not be able to compete with Callian as she is now. The problem is, Kaka is anything but normal, or rather, all the girls who have become members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order have long lost any connection to the word normal. Containing the star-hunting dragon Mumu Narabel, carrying the blessing curse of the supreme dragon god Asha, and a supersized magic pool specially prepared for hatching dragon eggs. Every day, the girls of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order bathe in the magical pool with close encounters with mysterious creatures from beyond the stars. They have chosen a path that is different from all the wise beings in this world. Kaka is one of the best in the Wilderness Bride group, the strongest among them. She is just one step away from transcending from being an ordinary person to becoming a hero. For humans born during the period of magic tide decline, this step is like crossing a great divide. It requires a lot of resources, luck, and strong bloodline. For Kaka, it is as easy as crossing a thin piece of paper. She had the confidence to take that step 3 days ago. She just patiently suppressed the boiling warrior blood within her, not rushing to take that step. This is her intuition, If she follows the boiling bloodline and enters that world, she can naturally become a member of the hero ranked. But that alone is not enough. She needs to have a clearer understanding of her own path, which is the essence of being a hero. This is the advice given to her by Saramanda, who has walked that path before her. The warrior bloodline is the pinnacle of human research on the troll clan and can be regarded as a degraded and incomplete giant bloodline. When entering the warrior frenzy state, it intensifies the person's physical abilities and makes them lose the ability to feel pain. They display an incredibly wild fighting stance. However, this condition also continuously consumes the warrior's life force. Essentially, this occupation burns life to exchange for combat power. The problem is that humans are not like trolls. Even if their hearts are pierced, they won't die. But if a berserker bleeds too much or gets torn apart, they will die. Humans don't have the gift of immortality. Based on what you have, you should be able to awaken this gift. So it's best to suppress your impulses. Maybe that way you can do it. Saramanda made this judgment after thoroughly examining Kaka's body. The berserker lineage is a degraded version of the troll clan, and the troll clan's gift of immortality comes from the ancient Earthchild giants. In theory, humans with the berserker bloodline have a slight chance of regaining a similar gift as Sue's immortality. This opportunity only exists during the transformation from human to a hero-ranked being. It is a fundamental change in life, the most important step from being immortal to a transcendent world. No matter how powerful a berserker is, they will get injured if they haven't become hero-ranked. They will die if their heart is pierced, and they can't regenerate lost limbs. However, once someone becomes hero-ranked, anything is possible. A hero-ranked berserker can almost ignore any damage from ordinary weapons. Being impervious to blades and bullets is just the basic level. Being invincible on the battlefield is achievable. In the era of ancient weapons, a powerful warrior known as a hero-ranked berserker could determine the outcome of a battle. This was before the existence of magic armor, making them the strongest known war hero among humans. The path that appeared before Kaka was the path of these mighty heroes. Instead of choosing this path, she pondered her true essence as a hero and made a decision. Suppressing her own advancement, she controlled the power of her boiling blood. Although the anger within her body was raging, Kaka's expression remained calm, and her grip on the spear didn't waver. Whoosh! The sharp spear swung and created a circle of icy light, as if claiming its own territory and repelling anything that approached. Ding! Kalian's dual blades experienced a powerful impact, causing intense deformation. Both the person and the blades were sent flying. Astonished, Kalian looked at his deformed moon blade. This was the Cold Weapon King, symbolizing the pinnacle of Divine-era technology. The difference in weapon quality between the two sides was unexpectedly significant. And what's the deal with this scary power? Did she unleash all of the berserker blood in her body? But if she had, she would have already entered a state of uncontrollable bloodlust. Not enough. Kaka took a deep breath again. Not reached the limit yet. Not seeing her own end. Chapter 12 for this body still has untapped potential. The field that has never been reached before, the realm that only the legendary berserkers are said to enter, hasn't been reached yet. She needs more excitement. Sister, use your strongest form. Kaka raised the spear in her hand, starting to unleash the most terrifying thing within her body. In those eyes, there was burning blood. It seems like you've encountered it too. Shaking her hair, Kalian walked up to her trembling mount and kicked the belly of the feigning death saber-toothed tiger. Awu! Faced with unimaginable monsters, the saber-toothed tiger could only shrink its limbs in frustration, wearing an expression of "I surrender." Back then, in a desperate situation, Kalian unleashed her berserker bloodline without any regard, ultimately beating the once dominant saber-toothed tiger to near death. Before reaching the hero rank, unleashing the berserker bloodline within oneself is an extremely dangerous act, with a reported death rate of over 90%. For wilderness brides who are not yet 18, Releasing their Berserker bloodline is basically the same as committing suicide. Even if they defeat their enemies, they will ultimately be buried in the wilderness. Without the talents of the Troll clan, complete Berserk transformation is like seeking death. However, there will always be geniuses who can surpass this common knowledge. Kallian is that kind of genius. After her first release of the Berserker bloodline, she completely mastered this method as a wilderness bride. Kaka, who is also a genius, can feel the strength of each other. That's why Kallian decided to challenge her sister first. The Berserker lineage is the most warlike among the human race. How much have you unleashed? From the beginning of the battle, both sides knew that the other had used techniques to unleash their bloodline power, just in different degrees. Currently it's 90%, just a little more to reach the limit. His eyes showed signs of burning blood, indicating that the Berserker was about to enter a state of uncontrollable rage. Generally, when a normal Berserker unleashes their bloodline power beyond 50%, they enter this state. At around 80%, they go mad and die. However, Kaka had already reached the critical point of 90% and still managed to remain calm. Even her appearance still resembled that of an icy and beautiful woman. 80%, you really are bold. Kallian laughed. It had been a long time since Kallian had unleashed his Berserker power in such a thrilling way. The first time she faced a desperate situation and awakened, she reached an awakened state beyond 70%. In that state, she effortlessly left the saber-toothed tiger half dead. 8 years later, she had already mastered the ability to unleash up to 80% without changing her composure. However, this is not the limit. Whether it's her or her little sister, they both undoubtedly aim to be 100% legendary. It is said that if one can fully grasp the power of their Berserker bloodline before reaching hero rank, they can achieve the most perfect form of the Berserker bloodline after advancing. That is also known as the extraordinary talent of the Leviathan faction's Land Ace Ogre clan, the Undying Body. For a Berserker who unleashes power by burning their life force, there is no better extraordinary talent than this. Well, then let me see. Our 100%. Kallian licked her own tongue and took off her eye patch. During the wilderness trial, the eye that was taken by a saber-toothed tiger is now replaced by a gemstone fake eye. Even though it's a fake eye, the pupil contains a substance similar to flowing blood. This is a magical item that Kallian recently discovered by chance in a ruin, which perfectly replaces the eye she lost. The more determined she was, the brighter the shining red light emitted by the gemstone eyes became, and the phenomenon of boiling blood became even more intense. It was truly a prop tailored for her. The only side effect was that whenever she used the power of these eyes, she could always hear some inexplicable noise. It sounded like Ada. Ada. Ah, the king. Or something like that. But it didn't matter. As long as it was usable, it was good enough. The Berserker bloodline had no magical abilities, but it provided strong resistance against all curses and magic. With her iron-like determination, Kallian completely ignored the influence of these noises. Due to the power of using this fake eye, Kallian saw a lot of strange black particles. She called this eye Black Lotus. Now was the moment to unleash the power of the Black Lotus. 90%, 91, 92. Kaka, holding the spear, gradually touched the limits she had never tried before. No one knew what 100% awakening of the Berserker bloodline would be like. Those who could achieve this level in the past were already part of the divine era. The only thing we can be sure of is that since the decline of magic, it has become almost impossible for a Berserker to advance to the hero rank. The two heroes of the Wild Ranger squad, even though they have Berserker blood, have chosen a different path than that of the Berserkers. They have decided to train their own saber-toothed tigers and embark on the Wild Hunter path together. The pure advancement of the Berserker bloodline has long been a legend because it is impossible to reach a higher level of bloodline awakening. However, at this moment, two young girls are challenging this legend, and they are not just following the normal path of Berserker advancement, but the legendary path that even few Berserkers in the Divine Era were able to complete, 100% bloodline awakening. Hold on, I don't care about any Ada. My body is mine to control. Kallian tightly grips the split moon blade, whose blade, initially heavily damaged, is slowly repairing itself. The ability to self-repair is one of the masterpieces of the magical metal from the Divine Era, but unfortunately, humans have not been able to create such incredible magical metal since the end of the Divine Era. The Moon Blade is a high-quality weapon made from this memory-infused magical metal and represents the pinnacle of cold weapons from the Divine Era. No risk, no reward. Kallian knows that this fake she obtained by chance has problems, but she is taking a gamble. She's betting on her ability to control this mysterious magical tool. Ada! Black particles swirl within Kallian's fake eye, releasing an aura that doesn't belong to this world. Silver Dragon. The air around Kaka was filled with a magical presence, the aura of the divine Silver Dragon. Without any particular order, both of them surpassed their limits at the same time, completing the awakening of their bloodline to its fullest extent. Chapter 12:05 Once again, the Moon Blade transformed, revealing a third form that most wilderness rangers had never seen before. It took on the shape of a crescent moon, its blade shimmering with a faint silver glow. This is the ultimate form of the Moon Blade, capable of long-range throwing and close-quarter slashing. However, it requires exceptional skill, and only a few elite wilderness rangers can unleash the blade in this form. Moreover, this is a form that can only be used by berserkers once their bloodline is highly awakened. It is a weapon specifically designed to deal with trolls, their ultimate foes. The curved blade appears still, but in reality, it consists of several layers that spin rapidly. Each part, except for the handle, is a terrifying blade capable of instantly slicing through steel. To cut through the incredibly tough muscles and bones of trolls, this level of cutting force is necessary. This circular arch structure cannot last for too long. Once activated, the battle must be resolved within 10 seconds. Otherwise, the Moon Blade itself will be damaged, making it a truly deadly ace. The battle determined the winner in just an instant. Time seemed to slow down for a moment. Kallian, who had been running, finally threw the Moon Blade, slicing towards Kaka from an incredible angle. Kaka gripped his spear with both hands, traced an oval shape, and then thrust it forward. The Moon Blade flashed. The spear pierced through. One of Kaka's arms flew up, blood spurting out. A twisted and deformed Moon Blade soared into the sky and landed several tens of meters away. On the other side, Kallian, who had thrown the Moon Blade, had her heart pierced by the sharp spear. Her whole body was pinned to the ground, spraying a large amount of blood. 100%. It turns out to be like this. This is 100%. Both of them almost simultaneously said similar words. Then one fell down, while the other remained motionless. Victory belonged to Kaka, belonged to the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order Knight with stronger power, faster speed, and more terrifying explosive force. Speaking of skills and battle experience, the captain of the Wilderness Ranger Squadron, Kallian, naturally excelled. But after being nourished by the aura of the Holy Silver Dragon so many times, Kaka's physical qualities have long surpassed her older sister. It was precisely this error that led to Kallian's defeat. Her Moonblade was blocked by Kaka's defense and couldn't unleash the full power of the Moon Throw move. In contrast, Kaka clearly held back. Otherwise, it wouldn't be piercing the heart, but completely disintegrating Kallian. As for why Kallian's heart was pierced, it was because it was an opportunity and also a kind of ritual. Kaka carefully put his severed arm back in its original position, then bravely used a bandage to wrap it up tightly before finally pulling out the spear that had pierced his sister's heart. Bang! 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 Kallian, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly felt her heart violently start beating again, showing no signs of being pierced just moments ago. To die and come back to life was the necessary step for Sue's bloodline to awaken to its full potential. It was also the step that both Kaka and Kallian were seeking. Originally, both sides were evenly matched, and it should have ended in a stalemate, considering they both possessed the full power of Sue's bloodline. Unfortunately, both Kaka and Kallian had miscalculated. After being nourished by the sacred silver dragon's energy, Kaka's body surpassed the normal limits of a berserker with a full-power Sioux bloodline. Sister Kalian's new moon throw couldn't push Kaka to the limit, but it did increase her liberation level from 100% to a theoretical value that doesn't exist, approximately 120%. Don't underestimate this 20% difference. It's like a normal human running the 100-meter dash in around 9 seconds, while you can run it in under 8 seconds. That 1 second difference is almost like the difference between two different species. This battle was a complete defeat for Kalian. She lost to her sister, who had a bloodline liberation level of 120%, which doesn't even exist in the history of berserkers. How is it possible that 100% isn't the limit? While holding her racing heart, Kalian felt more clearly than ever the direction of her hero's journey. Very close, really close. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say it's just within arm's reach. Even if she closed her eyes, she wouldn't make a wrong turn. She would become a legendary berserker, awakening an undying body like a troll. Even if her heart was pierced, she wouldn't die. It's one of the most obvious signs of an undying body. With a 100% bloodline liberation, resurrecting once after death is the secret advancement of the legendary berserker. She achieved it, which should make her happier than anyone else. But now she is full of confusion and doesn't immediately step into the already open path of heroes. Because right in front of her, her beloved younger sister showed another possibility. It turns out that 100% is not the limit of a berserker's bloodline. There is a way to enter a higher field. Now she cannot sit still. As a recognized seed of the Wild Ranger Corps, she has been steadfastly walking the path to becoming a legendary berserker, and she will not allow herself to be weaker than her sister. How did you train? What method can make your berserker bloodline surpass the 100% limit? Kalian gleamed at Sue, who was tying her own arms, and then forced her arms to copy Sue's Kaka. This method of healing injuries is unique to the human bloodline. Normally, only berserkers who have entered the hero rank possess this ability. Without stepping into the hero rank, but possessing the healing power of a hero, it proves that Kaka's chosen path is even stronger than the path of a legendary berserker. In order to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, Kaka thought for a moment and gave an answer. By not accepting the trial of that wonderful divine artifact, one cannot fully unlock the power of such immense strength through normal training. She realized that she might be able to surpass her limits beyond 100% after spending a month bathing in the magical pool and becoming proficient in the ceremony with the divine artifact. She learned how to attain immortality from her sister, so she didn't hide the secret of her becoming stronger from her. Is it still possible for me to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order now? Kalian realized for the first time that she seemed to have missed a great opportunity. The fourth batch should recruit members over 18 years old, but the requirements remain the same. Kaka nodded and stated Ain's recruitment requirements. The task of hatching dragon eggs had been completed, and the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order began to expand on a larger scale. After all, the magnificent goal of Lord Silver Dragon is the vast ocean of stars. Chapter 1206, Ain had already achieved the initial purpose of establishing the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Using the unique method of the Divine Era Tower, Ain gathered a large number of underage girls and awakened the sacred silver dragon, Yun Shi, from its slumber. The Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order had successfully achieved its goal. However, during this process, Ain discovered that the power of the great Lord Silver Dragon was even stronger than she had imagined. Even the dragon eggs left behind by the awakened Sue possessed a special ability to enhance the human bloodline of this world through the immense dragon's spiritual energy. For a world experiencing a decline in the period of magic tide, this was like a cheat code. In less than a month, Saramanda, Heidi, and Maras all successfully advanced to the hero rank. Even Ain herself awakened a mysterious occupation never before seen in Sia's history, the Silver Star Warlock. The noble families who had sent their daughters had initially treated them as hostages for the most powerful nuclear explosion queen on the continent. Now, the nobles of Sia Kingdom had gone crazy and wanted to send their daughters, even their youngest daughters, to the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. All the inns near the Divine Era Tower were bursting with people. Now joining the selection of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, you have to wait in line. The Faceless God defeated the Black Iron Giant, Emerald Sea Dragon Beast, Maras, Saramanda, and Heidi one by one, and the reputation of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order soared. After more than 1,000 members were accepted in the first phase, recruitment for the second and third phases is now in full swing under Ein's guidance. Since the elite members of the first phase have already completed the epic task of hatching dragon eggs, the recruitment for the second and third phases of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order has slightly relaxed its requirements. After all, pure and beautiful flowers under the age of 18 are always limited. Considering that the members who join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order in the first phase will naturally grow up, the age requirements will be completely relaxed starting from the fourth phase. Women over 20 years old, or even older, can also join. Of course, the requirement of purity will not change. After all, this is an exclusive Knight Order prepared for the great and sacred Lord Silver Dragon. The ultimate goal is to become the strongest organization in Sia's world, spanning the stars and seas. In light of this, Saramanda, Maras, and Heidi all stated that there are still many outstanding adult women in their clans who are qualified to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Representatives of the Dwarf Tribe and other Leviathan factions also expressed that there are many members in their clans who meet the requirements of the first phase, but have not come to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. With a grand gesture, Ein said, "Come all, the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, with the goal of spanning the stars and seas, will never have enough members. Compared to the vast galaxy where Lord Silver Dragon resides, the elite members of Sia's world's Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order are simply not worth mentioning." In order to secure the future of Sia's world, Ein decided to expand the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order by any means necessary. Kaka and Nini ran to join their original team, because they received hints from Ein and proudly displayed the newly crafted exclusive weapon on their backs. Within the entire Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, there are only a few knights who have been supplied with weapons of this caliber. It is evident how highly Ein values the Moonblade Rangers from the wilderness. The fourth phase. "Your Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order has quite the ambition," Callian said as he pressed down his racing heart, put on his eye mask again, and his cheeks felt slightly warm. At present, she is only a small half-step away from reaching hero rank status, and breaking through at any time is not a problem if she is willing. 100% advancement of the Berserker bloodline is the most powerful path of advancement that she knows as a wilderness bride. However, now she doesn't think so anymore. Her sister, the representative from the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, has already shown her a path that surpasses the awakening of the 100% bloodline. If she didn't know about this road before, she would have easily reached the pinnacle of the Berserker's path and completed her advancement without hesitation. But now that she knows about the existence of this road, she will not be satisfied with her current path of advancement. The wilderness brides have never been afraid of danger. The wild warrior blood flowing through their bodies makes them choose not to settle for an ordinary life of marriage and children, even if it means dying in the harsh wilderness. Either they overcome the harsh wilderness and prove themselves to be the chosen ones favored by the wilderness, or they silently disappear into the wilderness. No wilderness bride lives an ordinary life. From the moment they awaken the wild warrior blood within them, they are destined to be extraordinary. Even the cemetery is not our target. What we want is greater. Kaka, unusually, revealed the secret of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. This secret can be considered as a secret that all the elite members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order share. Is there a greater goal than this underground cemetery? If it's you, no, if it's us. Kalian's eyes gradually brightened. The unique connection between sisters allowed Kaka to convey the great ambitions of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order to her sister, without saying much. "I join." Callian patted Kaka's shoulder, and the two sisters looked up at the sky together. A goal greater than the underground cemetery, which had already conquered the entire world of Sia, doesn't exist on Earth. So, what is it? It is that starry sky that makes the small and humble dwarves and the immense and invincible dragons of the Sia continent look up with longing and obsession. If we set this as our goal, even the underground cemetery, which seems to have conquered the world, becomes insignificant. "Welcome, sister." Having completed Ein's recruiting task, Kaka rarely curved her lips into a slight smile, and the icy beauty of the Wilderness Bride group laughed. On the other side, representing the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, Nini, who is lively and good at singing and dancing, enthusiastically describes the wonderful days in the Order to her companions. "You have no idea how well we eat in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Do you know about bread? Queen Ein and Princess Adley always bring various delicious bread. I swear in the name of my tribe, there is nothing tastier than that in the whole world, especially those golden, soft, and flaky bread. Eating them feels like being in heaven, making your whole body weak." Growl. The wilderness rangers surrounding Nini couldn't help but make beautiful sounds from their throats. Chapter 1207. Nini, representing the Wilderness Bride group, is similar to Kaka. The presence of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order can also be seen in several other countries and even teams from different continents. South Continent, a legion of heavily armored war elephants. Several girls with slightly dark skin confidently stood in front of a group of gigantic war elephants that they had never dared to hope to ride in their entire lives. These massive war elephants, towering over 3 people in height and resembling small mountains, are the most terrifying heavy armored units in the South Continent, and possibly in the entire world of Sia. With a weight of over 10 tons and armor close to a ton, only fearsome giants like the mammoth war elephants can bear such heavy gear. This legion of heavy armored war elephants can be considered the pride of the entire South Continent civilization, one of the invincible embodiments in the era of weaponry. Compared to the Moonblade archers, who are all members of an assassination unit, the elephant soldiers who ride these heavy war elephants actually serve more like servants to the war elephants. Yes, you heard it right, the elephant soldiers are not the controllers of the war elephants. They are only responsible for taking care of their daily needs, feeding these huge creatures, bathing them, and grooming their bodies. The core forces of the heavy armored war elephant unit are not humans, but these mammoth war elephants themselves. Adult mammoth war elephants have almost the intelligence of human teenagers. The human pioneers encountered this species on the grasslands of the southern continent. After an initial hostility and war, with the help of certain individuals, the current heavy armored war elephant unit was established. Humans were responsible for making armor for war elephants and providing them food. The war elephants joined the human battlefield and helped them conquer all enemies, resulting in a mutually satisfying trade. Compared to the saber-toothed tigers of the wilderness rangers, the lifespan of a war elephant was longer. It was said that they could live up to 300 years. The war elephant soldiers of Nanda Road often took care of one war elephant for their entire lives. They dedicated themselves to this profession and took pride in it, passing it down from generation to generation. At this moment, the members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order who stood before the war elephant were few descendants of the war elephant family. These girls had a mysterious mission. They were not communicating with the war elephant soldiers, but rather with the ancient and powerful war elephants that possessed ancient wisdom. Amo, take more. The people from the Sia continent didn't understand the gestures and secret language passed down through generations by the war elephant family. The dark-skinned girls quickly gained the upper hand. The largest war elephant in the heavy-armored war elephant unit stood over 5 meters tall. It was possibly the closest species to a giant in this world. The leader of the armored war elephant unit shook its long trunk and then stomped the ground forcefully. Not far away, from the most mysterious region of the continent, Lamia Priestess Maras, one of the humans' archenemies, also shook her tail and secretly transmitted information. That's right, it was the mysterious Lamia clan that originally brought together the alliance between humans and the War Elephant clan. It was the achievement of a certain generation of snake-eyed priests. The War Elephant clan used to belong to the Leviathan faction, but because their habitat, the South Continent, was too far away, they didn't participate in the war that determined the ruler of the Sea Continent. After the humans' influence finally spread to the South Continent, the Lamia priests made a decision to bring the War Elephant clan into the humans' camp and sign an equal contract with them. For humans who migrated to the South Continent, facing various plagues and the threat of death, this was an irresistible temptation. For the Lamia clan, this was a hidden move, even though they didn't know how long it would take to see the results. But planning for the future is the unique strategic policy of the Lamia clan. Compared to the simple-minded Troll clan, the Lamia clan's advantage in intelligence was obvious. Only if the Leviathan faction goes to war with humans again, this hidden move will show its effectiveness. However, now Immerse decided to activate this hidden move ahead of time. Compared to the goals of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, the war between the Leviathan faction and humans became insignificant. She believed that with the appearance of the Holy Silver Dragon, the whole world would soon experience a great change. The emergence of the underground cemetery confirmed Immerse's thoughts even more. The main theme of this era was no longer the war between the Leviathan faction and the human camp. With the disappearance of the dragon race, the will of the Holy Silver Dragon, Ash, became the will of the Leviathan faction. Without even realizing it, Yunshi had already been regarded as the leader of the Leviathan faction in this era, and the camp's mission of reviving Leviathan was in full swing. Lamia, mermaids, and the Troll clan were at the forefront and tasted the sweetness. After the gnomes and several other races also got a share, the whole Leviathan faction was secretly celebrating. Even though the Leviathan alliance still existed after losing its leader, it remained fragmented and scattered without a core. The Mermaid clan ruled the oceans, the Lamia clan controlled the swampy areas, and the Troll clan secluded themselves in volcanic regions. The once powerful Leviathan faction could be said to be in name only, never returning to its former glory. The appearance of the Holy Silver Dragon, Yunshi, was like a lighthouse in the dark world for the long-disbanded Leviathan faction, the only hope. Yunshi didn't do anything. He simply passively released his dragon's spiritual energy, allowing Saramanda, Immerse, and Heidi to all achieve their hero rank status. Immediately, he was recognized as the new leader of the Leviathan faction. The prince of the human kingdom, called Ash, deceives the naive little girls in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. The elites of the Leviathan faction can easily tell that Yunshi cannot be human just by smelling him. Even Saramanda, who has a carefree personality, discovered Yunshi's true identity after spending a few days with him. She reached an agreement with Immerse and Heidi. The leader appeared, and the once scattered Leviathan alliance naturally returned. With Saramanda, Immerse, and Heidi, the most outstanding representatives of the new generation of Leviathan, the entire Leviathan alliance is rapidly rebuilding. Many elites from the Mermaid clan, Lamia clan, and Troll clan received their information and are now leaving the sea, swamps, and volcanoes, heading towards the Tower of the Gods. The selection process for the third and fourth terms of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order is tailored specifically for them. Well, Yunshi is still completely unaware of this. After all, he chose the main task, Sea is Light, which involves collecting the trials of the 12 constellation gods' weapons. He would never have imagined that the progress of the other task, Leviathan Resurrection, is far more active than Sea is Light. It has now exceeded 70%. Chapter 12:08 The heavy-armored war elephant core from the South Continent was one of Lamia clan's hidden cards. It was originally prepared for a possible second war between factions that could arise with humans. However, now, this hidden card is being put into action directly, because Lamias have come to the conclusion that a future faction war is no longer necessary. Essentially, The war between the Leviathan faction and the human faction was for the distribution of resources in this world. Humans needed more resources to grow, while the Leviathan faction needed vast lands for reproduction. This was an irreconcilable contradiction and the fundamental reason for humans waging war against the dragon race. The emergence of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order is a new signal for the Leviathan faction. The appearance of the mysterious ancient relic, the sacred silver dragon, has shown the Leviathan faction a brand new dawn. The Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order's goal is not limited to this world, but to a broader future. The strong members of the Leviathan faction also chose this path and decided to create a brand new future with the new Holy Silver Dragon Alliance as the core. With the agreement reached between the Knights of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order from the South Continent and the heavy armored war elephant troops, the progress of the Leviathan faction in reclaiming Su has increased once again, surpassing 75%. Not only here, but also in the Church Legion from the West Continent, there are appearances of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. This time, it was the mermaid princess Heidi who went to negotiate. The human church, which is the religious power, didn't exist in the divine era. In the divine era of Sia's world, it was the age of knights and mages, especially the powerful red-robed mages who dominated the land. They built one mage tower after another, and even today, remnants of those mage towers can still be seen all over the continent. In that era, there was no soil for the existence of religion. Powerful red-robed mages controlled the entire world. In the divine era, when magical power was at its peak, magic spells were the strongest force. It was not until the end of the divine era and the arrival of the period of magic tide decline that humans struggled to leave Sia continent and began to immigrate to other continents, facing extremely harsh environments. It was then that a certain belief quietly emerged. At this moment, the priests in the Western Black Crusade are the messengers of God. This divine being, beloved by the people of the Western continent, was born after the divine era. With a black cross as its emblem, it is a deity of courage and hope. The priests of this deity of courage and hope excel in a praying technique called battle hymn. As long as there is a priest present, the Crusaders can unleash unimaginable fighting power. The courage hymn that boosts willpower. The passionate hymn that enhances attack power. The sacred hymn that heals injuries. Within the context of the declining magic era, the Crusaders, who still possess extraordinary power inheritance, may be the rarest army in the human world, led by priests who excel in divine magic. As long as the priests are still present, the Crusaders will never surrender. Even if they shed their last drop of blood, they will fight to the end. So why can the priests still have extraordinary casting abilities when all the human mages have perished? Do the gods they believe in truly exist? The answer is that there are no gods in this world, except one, Creator God Sword Sia. This is the origin of the Sia tribe, and the only deity recognized by the Leviathan faction. As for the god of courage and hope in the Western continent, it was created by the Mermaid clan. Yes, just like the heavily armored war elephant corps in the South continent, the Cross Church of the West continent is also a creation of the Leviathan faction, penetrating into humanity through the dominate Mermaid clan. Similarly, they are weapons prepared for the possible outbreak of a second world war between the Leviathan faction and humanity in the future. The priests of the god of courage are not pure humans, or rather, pure humans cannot master the divine art called prayer at all. The essence of this divine art comes from the Mermaid clan's bloodline, a transcendental physique created by the fusion of Mermaid clan's magic and human babies. Every time this secret art is cast, it requires the precious casting material called black whale oil and a voluntary sacrifice of a royal member of the Mermaid clan. The number of royal members in the Mermaid clan is not many, and the sacrifice of each individual is a big event. However, in order to create this non-existent belief in gods, they still choose this most difficult path. Naturally, these extraordinary priests know where they come from and faithfully follow their own missions, spreading the belief in the God of courage. They are children of mermaids and the children of God in the Courage Church, serving as the spiritual leaders of the West Continent. For humans, Hope is necessary, even if it is false and the divine doesn't exist. After experiencing centuries of deceit, the false noble families can become true aristocrats. The non-existent divine, through the dedication of the marine priests over generations, becomes a sanctuary for the human soul. Leaving behind the Sia continent, the Courage Church has laid roots in the West continent, gradually establishing cities, civilizations, and nations. The Church has played a crucial role in this process. The existence of prayer magic and the belief in the God of courage are as natural to the people of the West continent as breathing. They are baptized in the Church from birth, gathering every weekend to pray. Young boys with the talent for combat are nurtured by the Church and eventually become loyal crusaders. Growing up listening to tales of brave knights and understanding the importance of the priests to the Courage Church, they are willing to die for the priests. This loyalty transcends earthly bonds and is more important than life itself. Oh, by the way, the priests of the God of Courage have a similar beauty to that of mermaids, but in a male form. Heidi came before the Crusaders of the West Continent, politely bowing as a tribute to the predecessors who sacrificed their lives to fulfill their mission on this earth. La! Then came a melodic song that could only be produced by mermaids. It was their unique way of conveying messages, known as the Mermaid Song. Several priests, dressed in black with perfect beauty, the God of Courage, stood up one by one. They looked at each other and nodded. We understand. If that is everyone's will, the gods surely also expect it. For courage and hope, with a cross mark on their chests, the priests of the West Continent praised the non-existent deities and reached an understanding with the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. The progress bar for the epic quest, the resurrection of Leviathan, moved again, reaching 80%. Even though it wasn't Yuan Shi who took on this mission, he was now in a deserted tower not far from the Babylon Sky Tower, nervously watching the faceless god in front of him. His next camp mission, Sia's Light, was reaching a critical point. The purpose of this mission was to collect 12 constellation gods' weapons and ultimately revive Su, the creator god Sia. Originally, Yunshi thought that this mission was simply about collecting the scattered 12 constellation gods' weapons from around the world. However, after bringing back 8 pieces of the constellation gods' weapons from the underground cemetery, which was ruled by his childhood friend, Phyllis, Yunshi realized that things were not as simple as he had imagined. At first, it wasn't very obvious, just a slight sign. As time passed, this sign became more and more obvious. Specifically, the faceless god, who was originally blank, was emitting a strong signal. The 8 constellation gods' weapons also responded to the signal emitted by the faceless god. Yunshi believed that if it wasn't for Pafa's mischief, the original system of the faceless god would have woken up and accepted these 8 constellation gods' weapons. This means that these 8 constellation gods' weapons were originally meant for the faceless god. The mission of the faceless god is to collect these constellation gods' weapons and, in the end, restore the legendary creator god Sword Sia. Yunshi could even deduce that this mission had always existed. However, it was not originally him who was supposed to carry out this mission, but Ayn, a girl from the Adley lineage who fully awakened her virgin constellation bloodline many years later. Since birth, she could sense the existence of the faceless god and would personally release its seal, using the power of her bloodline to pass all trials and gain the recognition and inheritance of the faceless god. When all 12 constellation gods' weapons are gathered, the faceless god will awaken completely, revealing the invincible stance of the divine vessel and uniting Sia's world. That era would be the resurrection of the creator god's Sword Sia. As for Yunshi, it was obvious that he had no part in this plan because he never received the faceless god's inheritance. It seemed like this was not something prepared for him. However, Yunshi had Pafu in his hands. The mischievous Pafu caused the original system of the faceless god to crash. The bloodline recognition and matching mechanism that should have existed disappeared along with it. The Pafa system replaced the original divine vessel system, allowing Yuan Shi to use the power of the faceless god. However, The mission of the faceless god didn't disappear. The system woven by Pafu, which allowed the future Sia to manipulate the bloodline of the faceless god, was the only thing destroyed. The faceless god itself didn't suffer any damage. It is a puppet prepared for the gods, a vessel carrying the mission of resurrecting Sia. Now, this vessel has encountered the constellation god's weapons that Yunshi has retrieved and immediately entered the predetermined mission mode. The faceless god, sleeping in the Tower of the Gods, is the cradle of the god and the container that protects the creator, God Sia. One by one, the constellation god's weapons were absorbed into the faceless god. The blank face of the faceless god gradually started to reveal beautiful contours. That was a feeling of nostalgic memories for Yunshi, as if he had seen the shadow in a dream. Gentle yet firm, beautiful and lovely. Although the most important and spiritual eyes were still closed, and one eye was covered by a steel eye patch, the faceless god had already begun to show the charm of a divine being. How did you do this? I can feel it. Something is awakening in Su. Yunshi looked at the faceless god with immense respect. He was wrong, completely wrong. This might not be some faceless god. It was just a nickname given by the uninformed Ein to this perfect puppet. When the faceless god obtains its true face and opens its eyes, this towering 40-meter puppet will undergo a complete transformation. The faceless god will be inscribed with the essence of the creator god Sia and become a half-divine being. At that time, the faceless god will be a flawless and sublime existence, a gift prepared by the mysterious puppet maker for his friend Sia. The 8 constellation gods' weapons shaped the mouth, nose, eyebrows, and ears of the faceless god, with only the final and most important eyes remaining unfinished. Yunshi knew that the faceless god would only have a true appearance after he collected the last 4 constellation gods' weapons. At that moment, it was also the moment when the legendary creator god Sia revived Su in this world, the end point of his trial called Sia's Light. After absorbing 8 constellation gods' weapons, the faceless god fell silent once again. But now Yunshi's gaze towards the faceless god had changed. He could clearly sense that something was different. The faceless god infused with the 8 constellation gods' weapons was evolving towards a higher stage. Everything was predestined, whether it was him or the faceless god who was originally meant to welcome a descendant of Sia's bloodline in a future time period. They were doing the same thing. Creator God Sword Sia will undoubtedly revive Su in this world, displaying the glory of the divine. Pafu, is there something different? Entering the core of the faceless god once again, Yunshi discovered that the surroundings were completely different from before. On the previously blank floor of the core space, a huge emblem appeared, composed of 12 different constellation patterns, with 8 of them already illuminated, emitting a mysterious radiance naturally. Pafu! Pafu! Inside the gem on Yunshi's chest, the little creature called Pafu called out to its clones and received many echoes of poof poof. Echoes from all directions told Yunshi that the Pafu system still existed. Not only that, but it seemed to have gained some unimaginable benefits. It seemed that while the faceless god automatically absorbed 8 constellation gods' weapons, the Pafu clones were also considered part of its body and joined in this process. The faceless god, evolving towards the perfect divine vessel, had a power that Yunshi couldn't understand. The Pafu clones, who already had exceptional potential and adaptability, gained more than triple the strengthening as a result. Now, Yunshi could control the faceless god for a significantly longer time, increasing from 5 minutes at a stretch to 15 minutes. Chapter 1209, Connect. Standing in the center of the faceless god's core, Yunshi reached out his hand. The real Pafu emerged from the dragon gem on his chest, curiously connecting with the extensively evolved clones. The new Pafu system is now in sync with Yunshi, feeling almost like one person. In just a breath's time, when Yunshi opened his eyes again, he saw the vision of the faceless god. Now he can feel the operation of every Pafu unit. In the past, he could only barely control it when he reached a state of overload. But now, even without being in an overloaded state, he can effectively control the faceless god. He extended his finger, then tightly clenched it into a fist. The wings on his back, which were previously uncontrollable, extended naturally. Flying used to be the biggest weakness of the faceless god and a major disadvantage in battles against the Rift Space Dragon. If it weren't for the accidental capture by the magnificence of Sky Dance, it would have been difficult for Yuan-Shi to lock onto the target. Among the 4 ancient weapons in the underground cemetery, the Rift Space Dragon posed the greatest threat to the faceless god. Apart from the magnificence of Sky Dance when fully charged, Yuan-Shi didn't have many moves that could threaten the Rift Space Dragon flying 10,000 meters high. Until this moment, the wings that couldn't be successfully connected by the Pathos system finally opened up to Yuan-Shi. Ding! The wings, made entirely of metal, spread out layer by layer and weaved into a pair of steel wings behind Yuan-Shi. Now I can fly, and the gravity of this land can no longer hold me back. Just like the Rift Space Dragon, the Faceless God is a weapon that surpasses all levels of civilization in this world. It is God's vessel. The gods that cannot fly don't exist. These steel wings are not only the weapons of the Faceless God, but also the soaring will that can tear through the sky. After absorbing the 8 constellation gods' weapons, Yuan-Shi could feel the power of the Faceless God gradually being unsealed, as if Su was awakening from a long sleep. Perhaps when all 12 constellation gods' weapons are gathered, the legendary creator god Sword Sia will also be resurrected along with this faceless god, bringing Su back. What would this Sia's world, the legendary founding god, look like? Buzz! As if sensing Yuan-Shi's question in his heart, the inside of the faceless god started to emit a gentle silver light screen. In front of Yuan-Shi's eyes, a large amount of silver radiance spread out, transporting him into a dreamlike world. A black behemoth soared through the sky. It was a sky beast that was so large that it could cover the entire Sia continent, floating above an ultra-giant gaseous planet. It happily swallowed the still cloudy star bodies and considered this newborn gas planet as its own territory. You can tell that it really enjoys this good life. The recently born supergiant gas planet emits a lot of energy from the world's origins every moment. That is exactly the energy it needs to evolve as a fantasy creature, a rare essence of the stars. Occasionally, there are intruders, monsters, who try to steal this treasure in the star domain. Without exception, this black sky beast defeats and eats them all. Every time it eats a monster, the sky beast's body grows a little bigger. With absolute advantages, it can even defeat its peers who are stronger than itself. It is the ruler of this star domain, the one and only king. No one can stop its evolution. It just needs another 1,000 years to consume enough essence from the gas planet, and then it will complete its final step. Proudly, the sky beast hides the existence of this special star with its grown, massive body and considers it its own possession. However, the star has its own will and begins to dislike the sky beast, which constantly absorbs its essence. So, one day, a star contacted a special being and made a sound. "Help me. I dislike this." After several decades, one day, a great being responded to the newly born star's will. A beautiful silver sword light tore through the barriers of the world from an infinitely distant world, carrying countless wounds, and traveled to this unfamiliar world. What is that? The huge sky beast looked blankly at the sword light, still unaware of what it had encountered. Even though it was worn and almost broken, the silver sword light still proudly danced along the path paved with endless starlight, directly aimed at the endless sky beast. That was the final sword. That sword symbolized wisdom, courage, and love. Even if my body breaks, I will fulfill the final promise. The promise is to be completed, whether it takes 1,000 years or 10,000 years. Every day, the sun rises from the ground. Even if surrounded by relentless darkness, I will use my incomplete body to shatter it for you. With my last bit of strength, the shattered divine sword transformed into countless starlights, piercing through the proud sky beast's body, a fantasy creature that constantly absorbed the power of stars and killed it in the sky above the planet. Roar! The sky beast, instantly struck with a fatal blow, let out cursed and unwilling sounds. Its body turned into huge fragments, falling from the sky onto the planet that remained in a gaseous state. The body of the fantasy creature started to transform into the earth, mountains, and oceans. Upon the shattered body struck by the divine sword, new life appeared, while the sword itself broke into 12 pieces, scattered all over the newborn land. That dreadful resentment turned into a realm beyond iron and steel, imprisoning and binding this land, symbolizing Leviathan's unwavering persistence to never surrender. Many years later, the era of giants and dragons conquering ended, and a brand new race called humans emerged onto the world stage. In the beginning, there were only 12 people in this group. They were welcomed by many different groups, including dragons, because they could have children with other groups. At that time, no one could have imagined that the human race, which started with only 12 people, would multiply to such a terrifying number. The Golden Age had arrived. Like a guide of destiny, humans were born from the 12 constellation gods' weapons. They eventually defeated the dragons and became the rulers of the continent. However, the broken 12 constellation gods' weapons showed no signs of reuniting. It seemed like something was still missing, until one day, a distant starlight pierced through the heaven's banishment, which had been transformed by the resentment of Leviathan, the sky beast, and shone upon this secluded world. The faceless god appeared. That was the hope of this world, a gift from a distant friend who had created the divine sword of this world, and also a promise. Chapter 12:10. So this is Sia. Yunshi finally learned the truth behind the words of the Creator God in the memories he obtained from the faceless god. The sword that was covered in countless scars, having gone through numerous wars and burning its last power to pierce through Leviathan the sky beast, was Sia. Despite being almost shattered beyond recognition, that glimpse of a torn, endless starry sky, like a crystal-clear aurora, still held an irresistible allure. Even Leviathan, the sky beast, with its power to devour planets, couldn't withstand the sword that shattered the void. One can imagine the terror of striking an almost shattered opponent with this sword. "I will revive you." Yunshi opened his eyes, looking at the silver-white radiance on his fingertips. The mission of the faceless god is to revive Su with the Creator God's sword, Sia. If this is the trial he must complete, he is more than willing to do it. Buzz! The shiny silver light curtain faded away like flowing water. Compared to before, Yunshi could clearly feel that the spirituality of the faceless god was increasing continuously. At this moment, the faceless god was no longer the cold and mechanized giant he first met. After accepting the existence of the Pafu system, God's vessel seemed to be slowly opening up its secrets to Yunshi. What was just seen was a part of the Creator God's sword Sia's memories. However, there were still many vague parts in the memories. Where did God's sword Sia come from? The planet continuously absorbed by Leviathan. How did it send out a distress signal and wait for the salvation of God's sword Sia? After that, how was life born in this world? Yunshi was very curious about what exactly happened in all of this. Oh, and the starlight that brought the faceless god to this world, it seems to contain a huge mystery. And in that starlight, Yunshi sensed a faintly familiar scent. It seems that the stars will choose this world as a place to test for a reason. This world is a place that the stars will watches over and effectively prevents any outside gods from spying. Apart from the owner of the underground cemetery, Elphilis, Yunshi hasn't encountered any other outsiders in this world. Almost there, just for more. After collecting 8 pieces of the constellation god's weapons, Yunshi looked towards the distant horizon. The ocean, the battleground of the final clash between humans and the Leviathan faction. In that great war, 3 pieces of the constellation god's weapons were permanently lost in the ocean, becoming humanity's most shameful battle. Perhaps it's time to go there and have a look. The deep sea, where even sunlight doesn't exist, located in an ancient and secluded area beneath the depths of the ocean. Phew! Huh! A loud breathing sound echoed in this deep-sea area that even the mermaid clan couldn't reach. It's in the ocean, but there is air here. From the structure of the Earth's crust, this is a sea within the sea, and it is the most primitive form of a gaseous ocean in the world. It's a world structure that humans can't imagine, and it's an environment that theoretically shouldn't exist. If humans were to come here, they would be shocked to discover that the concentration of magic in this gaseous ocean is more than 100 times that of the divine era. It's a value that shouldn't be possible in a normal environment. This is the initial form of this planet. The primeval sea evolved from a massive gaseous planet. Right now, in this ocean, a large black creature is greedily breathing. Every breath absorbs countless magic, but the expelled magic is less than 1/10 of the original amount. Thousands of years ago, this kind of breathing was completely opposite. Back then, a large amount of magic was exhaled, while only a very small part of magic was absorbed. Among the exhaled magic, there were more or less some silver-colored fragments. Those were the dust left behind by the shattered creator god's sword Sia. Except for the 12 largest fragments, it remained as powder. Unleashing the one strike of the sky beast's instant-kill sword came with a price. After that strike, creator god's sword Sia was already shattered, using up its final strength. And that incident also brought nightmare-like torment to the immortal sky beast. Not only was its body shattered and turned into the land and oceans of the planet, even its will suffered fatal injuries. It made its way through millions of years in a daze. However, everything changed on a certain day in the Divine Era when some deep-sea races discovered the gaseous ocean beneath the endless abyss. These ancient deep-sea races sensed the breath of the ancestors in this gaseous ocean. Leviathan, the sky beast, a giant, a dragon, the origin of all magical creatures. It didn't die, it is still alive, and it is sleeping in this primordial gaseous ocean. The deep-sea races that discovered this secret made a decision. That decision profoundly affected the whole world, making the greatest enemy of humankind disappear forever in Sia's world. The Dragon Clan has been destroyed. Yes, most people in this world may find it hard to believe, but the once dominant Dragon Clan, situated at the top of the pyramid, no longer exists. They all fell into a trap set by the deep-sea race and were sacrificed to this gaseous ocean, which is the body of Leviathan. At this moment, the floating gems in the gaseous ocean are the last traces left by the Dragon Clan in this world. The strongest race born from the body of Leviathan has also returned to Leviathan, as if it were the cycle of destiny. Along with the Dragon Clan, the deep-sea race also threw in 3 human weapons called Constellation God's Weapons, which fell into their hands after the humans' defeat. These 3 Constellation God's Weapons have the ability to restrain Leviathan's outbursts. They are used by the deep-sea race as a means to control the progress of Leviathan's revival. That's right, these mighty deep-sea races are trying to control their ancestors and attempt a feat that has never been achieved in Sia's world. Their goal is simple, not to target any particular race in this world, but to turn the entire world into an ocean, submerging it in endless water. Everything will return to the deep sea, to the mighty god. The species with octopus heads were deeply convinced about the future, as it was a divine revelation passed down from their ancestors millions of years ago. Recently, Leviathan's actions have become more active, and the 3 powerful weapons of Sia constellation, called God's Weapons, can barely control the sky beast's breathing. A small group of creatures living in the deep sea felt very happy, because a special celebration was happening again. This time, there was even a divine messenger appearing, named Ada, a deity in human form, exactly as described in the records, with a body made up of countless black particles. The time has come, and this world is about to become a realm of the deep sea. Chapter 12:11. In front of the huge ancient sea, black particles began to gather and formed scattered eyes made of runes, gazing at the partially formed and elusive existence within the ancient sea. Leviathan, the sky beast that once devoured planets, the origin of all creatures in Sia's world. Its power is so strong that even if Sia's god's sword shattered its whole body, it would not die, but continue to stubbornly live on. After a long period of time, using only the most basic ability of inhaling and exhaling, it began the process of resurrection. This is the terrifying aspect of being a legend ranked. Apart from being completely forgotten, there is no way to completely erase the existence of a legend ranked. Essentially, the legend ranked has surpassed the limitations of the physical body. Even if the soul is shattered, there is still a chance for it to return. The sentient beings that inhabit this Sia's world, whether the original giants and dragon clans or the later humans, have never forgotten the existence of Leviathan, the sky beast. If Sia represents life and radiance, then Leviathan represents power and dominance. As long as you look up at the sky, all the creatures in Sia's world know that the sky where Leviathan takes form is right there. The once glorious divine era civilization has challenged the sky many times, but the result has always been a complete defeat. The Rift Space Dragon of the Dragon Clan has fallen. The red-robed mages of the divine era have also perished. Only that steel-like sky remains unmoving, and only in cycles of thousands or even tens of thousands of years do small cracks occasionally appear. The Ten Leaves Alliance sent investigators to this world through that fleeting crack. On the side of the abyss, ancient gods once bestowed part of their will upon this world, and they chose the race known as the Deep Sea Clans, who have octopus-like heads. As a powerful race that dominates the deep sea, the biggest problem plaguing the Deep Sea Clans is that the deep sea areas they inhabit are extremely unique. Only a very few strong clan members can come up to the shallow sea areas to interact with other races. Weak clan members will have their internal structures collapse as soon as they leave the deep sea environment. This also led to the fact that, despite having intelligence that rivaled or even surpassed humans, and being trusted by the Dragon Clan and having abundant resources, the entire population remained very scarce. The ocean area that could meet their living requirements was only a small part of Sia's world, and it had long been unable to satisfy the reproduction needs of their clan. In order to solve this problem, the deep sea tribes tried every means possible, but the population still had to be limited to around 3,000 people in the end. Any more, and the food in the deep sea region would not be able to support their population. This unique deep-sea food was essential for their growth and development. In order to control the quantity of food, despite having a lifespan of over 1,000 years, they had to suppress the number of offspring in their race, and even kill the little lives born into this world due to accidents. For an intelligent race, this was a form of great torture. They had to witness the birth of little octopus heads, but immediately had to put them to death because the race couldn't provide the food they needed to grow. Only when a member of the clan died would they allow a new descendant to be born. This harsh family planning system drove many teenagers within the clan insane and caused several wars within the clan. As a clan located in the deep sea region, and hardly ever having wars with external clans, the most deaths in their history occurred due to civil wars over birth indicators. The problem was that even if they won the civil war and temporarily had a large number of reproductive indicators, the winning side would soon encounter the same problem. The number of 3,000 people was like an unpassable nightmare, haunting every generation of the deep sea tribe leaders. For the deep sea tribe, who had a natural lifespan of over 1,000 years and possessed powerful psychic abilities that even caught the attention of the dragon tribe, this kind of pain was something no other race could understand. Even though even the weak humans and domestic animals on the land didn't have to worry about food, the mighty deep-sea tribe had to kill their own children to ensure the tribe's food supply. In order to change this phenomenon, every leader of the deep-sea tribe spared no expense in searching for a way out. Among them, one generation of leaders once sensed the power from the abyss, which gave this underwater race a completely different belief from other races. Even though it was just a vague and elusive hope, it was still better than nothing for the deep-sea tribe. Then everything changed when they discovered the remains of Leviathan. No, it was the resurrecting corpse. That immense primeval sea held endless power, which came from Leviathan the sky beast, a legendary divine being. The entire Sia's world comprised mountains and oceans formed by the corpses of Leviathan. Leviathan was the foundation of Sia's world's transformation from a gaseous planet to its present state. If we can't solve the problem of the limited amount of food in the deep sea, then we need to think of a different way. Let the deep sea expand. This is the crazy idea that popped into the chief's mind the moment he saw this primeval sea where the Leviathan wreckage was discovered, and he couldn't stop himself from pursuing it. Guided by some kind of will in the depths, the deep-sea tribe began to make big moves. First, they obtained a key to control the Leviathan wreckage from the dragon tribe, Constellation God's weapons from Sia. Then, under the name of finding a treasure that could possibly change Sia's world in the future, and using parts of the Leviathan wreckage, they successfully deceived the trust of the dragon tribe. One after another, they brought all the members of the dragon tribe into the primeval sea, and with the power of the Sia god weapon, they controlled the Leviathan wreckage to devour these dragons. Like a sacrifice to the great origin, the long-lost Leviathan wreckage happily accepted the lives of all the dragons and transformed them into gemstones. The dragons in this world are the perfect beings evolved from the essence of the Leviathan wreckage. Faced with the call of the Leviathan wreckage, they are completely powerless to resist. Even the Mermaid clan and the Lamia clan, who were close to the Dragon clan, didn't know that the dragons had returned to their original home. And then it came. The deep-sea creatures, who once placed part of their will in this world, believed in ancient gods of their kind. The deep-sea creatures went against their own instincts, which was the masterpiece of the previous ancient gods. It can be said that it was the temptation of this ancient god that led to the downfall of the Dragon clan. And at this moment, floating above the primeval sea, is a being called Ada of the Abyssal Will. Chapter 12:12 Leviathan. Ada, a huge magic eye floated in the sky above the primeval sea, slowly releasing a large number of black particles. The remains of Leviathan, which were originally in a state of natural breathing, were gradually contaminated by the black. Around the ancient sea, the deep-sea creatures with octopus heads and bodies made up of tangled tentacles cheered one by one. Leviathan! 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 Ada! 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 The dream that their whole family has been chasing for millions of years, even willing to betray and sell out their original allies, the Dragon clan, is now right in front of them. The enormous ancient sea began to churn unnaturally, releasing black bubbles one by one. After millions of years of silence, the remains of Leviathan, which had been instinctively breathing, were slowly wriggling, and the rhythm of its breath was changing noticeably. A huge change is happening. Like the restlessness before a storm, Sia's world has undergone some unknown changes. The magic tide is stirring. On the fourth day of the call from the underground cemetery, nestled among the mountains in the center of the continent, Babylon's Sky Tower is continuing to rise at a visible speed, heading towards the unknown sky. The forces and tribe representatives from West Continent, South Continent, and Sia Continent have all gathered below Babylon's Sky Tower, waiting for the upcoming alliance. Even the tribe on the edge of human influence arrived beneath the Sky Tower yesterday. Right now, beneath the Tower of Babel in Babylon, there gathered a group of intelligent beings who represented the entire Sia's world. Besides humans, other races have also arrived. The Mermaid clan, rulers of the ocean. The Lamia clan, rulers of the swamps. The Troll clan, once known for terrorizing people. The cowardly and timid dwarf tribe. Because of a certain event, the Leviathan faction reunited and became the largest force outside of the human camp. However, all of this was insignificant to the owner of the underground cemetery. Her plan had reached its final stage with no possibility of failure. The Phantom of the Opera appeared, and conquering the world was just a side task. Collecting precious resources and minerals from all over the continent, almost emptying the collections of various countries and powers, is the most important mission of the army of the undead. Current progress of collection, 60%. The materials controlled by the countries and powers have all been moved to the warehouse of the underground cemetery. The remaining 40% is scattered in various corners of the continent. Even with the full excavation by the army of the undead and using all the hero-rank units as miners, it will take about a month to collect them all. After all, the precious minerals born in the whole world from the end of the divine era to the present are resources that the first generation of the king of undead couldn't sustain on its own. Being able to collect them in a month is already close to a cheat-like speed. Elphilis's arrival is not a coincidence, but because Sia's world has produced enough resources to build the Star Bridge, which made 10 Leaves Alliance decide to send its own envoy to complete this epic task. Discovering a brand new form of civilization in God's domain is enough to be remembered as a historic achievement, and it is also one of the shortcuts for hero-ranked individuals to shape a legend. If Elphilis were not a representative of the 4 Leaves in the 10 Leaves Alliance, she would not have been chosen for this task. According to the agreement with the countries of this world, today is the day when the king of undead of the underground cemetery comes forward to sign a formal alliance with them. It is also the time when the long-lost continental crown reappears. Even though Elphilis herself wasn't interested in the throne of this continent, once the Star Bridge is repaired, she will leave immediately, and the 10 Leaves Alliance and the forces of the Endless God's domain will handle the things that come after. But lack of interest is one thing, work still needs to be completed, and this is the dilemma of adults. At this time, Elphilis always reminisces about the carefree days in the small town. Compared to building the Star Bridge, leaving one's own name in the history of the Endless God's domain is an epic task that she prefers, along with having afternoon tea with Little She and chatting about the recent happenings in the Endless God's domain. In front of Little She doesn't need to carry any important missions, nor is she the heiress of the 10 Leaves Alliance or the representative of the 4 Leaf. Today is a good weather. Woof! Elphilis puts down her helmet and enjoys the freshly delivered golden cream bread. Really, she has told herself more than once, this is the last piece. She won't indulge in food anymore after eating this piece. To control her appetite, she went as far as cutting a golden cream bread into 20 pieces with a small knife, and then locking each piece in a little box. She, the young lady from the 10 Leaves Alliance, restricted herself to eating only 1 piece a day. As for the result, you could tell just by looking at the neatly stacked pile of little boxes on the table. The quantity had already exceeded 3 digits. Yes, today is the day of the king's return. Kingdom's shield held a magnificent crown adorned with 7 gemstones, and both his hands trembled uncontrollably. Ruby, sapphire, topaz, turquoise, diamond, emerald, jade. These 7 pure and translucent gemstones were set on the crown, creating a dreamlike and magical radiance. This crown had countless replicas. Almost every famous king in the Divine Era history had a crown with 7 gemstones, claiming their right to the throne as the ruler of the continent. However, there was only one true continental crown. After enduring the test of time and sedimentation in the world, it naturally formed the prototype of a god weapon. Only one more step remained for this crown to transform into the crown of the king, the object of inheritance. For the king of the underground cemetery, the step was effortlessly easy. As long as he wished, he could complete it at any time. No one expected that this legendary crown, which had long been surrounded by rumors, had not yet completed that step until now. Do you want to become the king? Or, how about I give you this crown? Elphilis shrugged her shoulders, licked the white cream on her lips, and had a nonchalant expression on her face. It's really embarrassing to wear this tacky crown and declare, I am the king to the continent. Whoever wants to be such a king can go ahead. No, that is your rightful position. No one can snatch it away, great king. Please remember, A king must understand the hearts of people. With a devout expression, Kingdom Shield kneeled down and offered their loyalty and vows to Elphilis. Chapter 12:13 Snap. 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 Colorful ribbons and balloons flew up into the sky around the Babylon Sky Tower, and magical fireworks once again bloomed in the sky of this continent after the end of the Divine Era. These are all treasures from the underground cemetery, which are considered ancient even among antiques. However, during the self-sealed million years, time almost stood still in the underground cemetery, and these treasures have also survived the long years until now. Rainbow jade, fireworks of 7 different colors intertwined, forming a structure similar to a ribbon. Double fish jade pendant, 2 colors, white and black, mixed together, yet clearly divided into 2 parts. Receive the sky sword. Sharp golden light sword pierced the sky, tearing through the clouds like the light of dawn. In the Leviathan Empire's camp, the smartest person on the continent, Poicaret, shook his head sadly and said the names of each magical firework with a look of regret in his eyes. Every firework was a magical creation of the Divine Era, representing the magnificent civilization created by the Divine Era mages. That era can never be returned to again. These precious magical fireworks are excellent materials for studying the civilization of the Divine Era. It's such a waste to treat them like ordinary fireworks. There were many formulas inside. Even he didn't know them. He had only seen the names of these fireworks in books. As the crystallization of magical elements, these magical fireworks can even be used as weapons. This means that every explosion in the sky right now is a genuine magical creation from the Divine Era. Why feel so sad? They are just toys, a deep voice whispered in Poicaret's ear. It was a lich, one of the elites from the underground cemetery. You are, Speaker Duke? Despite being transformed into a lich by the king of undead from the underground cemetery, Poicaret immediately recognized the red-robed lich standing before him. One of the greatest heroes of the Divine Era, the former leader of the Red Robe Mage Council that ruled the continent. He disappeared from the continent, and his whereabouts are unknown. Of course, the whereabouts of that person were only unknown to regular people. But the scholars who split from the underground faction at the time clearly recorded where he and the other politicians went. The underground cemetery, a place isolated from the world, was the hope for continuing the glory of the Divine Era. When it was discovered that magic still existed in the underground cemetery, it caused a huge uproar and led to the complete division of the Red Robe Mage Corps. Finally, some people decided to break into the underground cemetery and completely seal it, waiting for the long period of magic decline to end. The other group of people chose to stay on the surface, giving up the power of magic and embarking on the path of scholars. No one could prove who was right or wrong between the two sides. For the continuation of human civilization, both sides had their own reasons. Choosing to enter the underground cemetery meant isolating oneself from the world and sealing oneself for millions of years, waiting for the unknown period of magic decline to come to an end. During this process, what unexpected events would occur and whether humans could survive for millions of years by relying on the limited amount of magic, nobody knew for sure. The group that stayed on the surface accepted their fate of aging, sickness, and eventually losing magic. They desperately tried to pass on the sparks of civilization from the Divine Era. The magical era ended, and the era of knights began. The once mighty wizards fell from grace and became the subordinates of the knights they used to protect. They used their intelligence to assist the knights in achieving greatness and expanding their territories. For the wizards, that era was a time of great despair. Fortunately, they discovered that alchemy could still be used. The magic in the air was no longer enough to support their spellcasting, but the path called science allowed the alchemist warlocks to still possess some power. Meanwhile, there were a very small number of warlocks who didn't rely on the magic in the air, but but instead inherited extraordinary powers through their own bloodlines. These warlocks avoided the most tragic fate that befell the wizards. In the year when the period of magic decline officially arrived, many wizards despaired and took their own lives. The scholars and alchemist warlocks who are still present now were born during the period of magic decline. They can hardly imagine what it means for wizards who are accustomed to using magic elements from the air to lose their magical abilities. The air was their essence, their life, their wisdom, and their everything. Duke was one of the most powerful wizards in the Divine Era. Poincare could instantly recognize him because of the hexagram badge on his chest. The Star of Magic, Asia's world god weapon that doesn't belong to the 12 constellation gods weapon system, represents the leader of the Red Robe Mage Corps. It has been owned by the strongest members of the Red Robe Mage Corps throughout history. The ability of the god weapon, Fountain of Magic. A mage who holds this god weapon has a magic recovery speed more than 10 times faster than a normal hero rank mage, and they can also pay a price to triple their maximum magic capacity. For a magician, the powers of this god weapon are like cheating. It can recover magic 10 times faster, almost to the point of infinite magic, and increasing the limit 3 times means that certain impossible spells become within reach. The previous owners of the Star of Magic throughout the ages were famous forbidden spellcasters from the Divine Era. Many powerful forbidden spells were developed by them. Only those with 10 times faster recovery speed and triple the magic limit could come up with so many forbidden spells that humans couldn't possibly use. The last human to possess this Star of Magic was the former red-robed speaker, Duke, who was the last of his kind in the Divine Era. This magic god weapon, symbolizing the glory of the Divine Era magicians, ultimately disappeared with him in the underground cemetery. Poincare didn't expect to see the emblem of the Star of Magic and the last red-robed speaker again in this era that had long disappeared from human history. You must be my descendant. Duke looked at Poincare, his black eye sockets burning with green soul fire. Although long dead and turned to ashes, bound by the curse of the King of Undead in the underground cemetery, as the last holder of the Star of Magic, he still retained most of his memories and wisdom. In contrast, other red-robed wizards who were slightly weaker showed signs of being eroded by the breath of death, their emotions slowly disappearing. He knew that one day he would also become like them. The erosive power of time is the most terrifying poison in the world, something even gods cannot avoid. However, for now, he still retained the majority of his memories and thinking ability from when he was human. At first sight, he recognized that the person standing in front of him was his descendant. Chapter 1214 In the past, within the divided Red Robe Mage Corps, he chose to take the path of the underground cemetery, but forcefully made his son take a different path. This is a wisdom that humans learned during tribal times, not to put all their eggs in one basket. He himself entered the underground cemetery, while leaving his descendants on the surface, having grand plans. Regardless of which side fails, the other side can still survive, no matter what kind of existence it may be, as long as there is hope in staying alive. Back then, no one could have imagined that the King of Undead from the underground cemetery was still alive and held absolute dominion over everything in the underground cemetery. The most powerful Red Robe Mage Corps on the continent didn't even have the ability to release a decent spell against the owner of the underground cemetery, ending everything. We lost. It's difficult to admit this, but in the face of the King of Undead's absolute power, all strategies and plans became jokes. Even though Duke had the magical god weapon, he could only support for a short time, somewhere between 3 to 10 seconds. The power possessed by the King of Undead is beyond what any number of god weapons can change. It is a power that surpasses imagination, making even the mighty dragon feel fear. After we entered the underground cemetery, what happened to the realm of the mages? Despite already knowing the answer, Duke still wanted to hear from his descendants, to understand where he had made a mistake in preparing the path for them. Even without the power of magic, the mages still possessed the highest wisdom on the continent. They're the legitimate inheritors of the Divine Era civilization. Furthermore, there are also special beings called warlocks who can cast spells without relying on studying or the magic particles in the air. It is strange that there is not even a trace left of the realm of magic until now. About 100 years later, all mage realms disappeared, and the era of the knights began. Poincaré shook his head. Who could have imagined that the knights, originally considered as mere cannon fodder on the battlefield of the Divine Era, easily created by the mages during their glorious period, would eventually become the new rulers of the continent? The warlock lineage didn't become the inheritors of the mages as expected. The arrival of the period of magic tide decline led to the decline of all supernatural powers, causing a significant decrease in the birth rate of warlocks and the gradual weakening of their strong bloodline power. In the end, it was the various low-level bloodlines that the mages initially studied that stubbornly survived, even becoming more valued than the mages themselves. Almost all the pure Divine Era bloodlines, except in the Sia Kingdom, have disappeared. The power of warlocks has also been affected by the decline of the Magic Tide period. Now, it is the era of mortals, the era of science. It was supposed to be like this. Poincaré looked puzzled at the Babylon Sky Tower, rising from the ground in front of him, and the undying magicians emerging from the underground cemetery. Why have these ancient beings of the Divine Era reappeared, one by one, when the research clearly showed that there was still a long time until the end of the Magic Tide period? It would take at least several generations, thousands of years later, for a new surge in magical power. This is the conclusion unanimously recognized by the scholars of the Empire. Indeed, the magical elements in the air are still so scarce. Duke nodded, agreeing with the assessment of his descendants. If he hadn't transformed into a lich form upon his death, he probably wouldn't be able to cast spells in this environment, let alone control a huge undead army. This world hardly possesses the elements necessary to give birth to powerful supernatural abilities. When he led the undead army to conquer those countries, he couldn't even find a handful of hero-ranked individuals. In comparison, the underground cemetery is clearly too extraordinary. The problem seems to have started from when the Queen used a forbidden spell called nuclear explosion. For the immense changes that have occurred on the continent in the past month, Poincaré calculated many times, incorporating all the known information, and finally focused on one event. Before that event, the Leviathan Empire was only one step away from conquering the continent. The powerful First Magic Armor Corps had already defeated the last Royal Knight group in possession of Divine Era bloodline, celebrating their victory. Then a forbidden spell appeared that should never have appeared in this era. A nuclear explosion instantly destroyed the entire First Magic Armored Legion, reducing the Empire's strongest 3 tidal machines to ashes, not even leaving a single fragment. Based on later measurements, the temperature at the center of the nuclear explosion may have exceeded tens of millions of degrees, reaching a level that even calculations find terrifying. And the energy released by the nuclear explosion was hundreds of times greater than the accident inadvertently caused by the Divine Era mages as recorded in history. When Poincaré reached this conclusion, he doubted his formula for the first time in his life. The nuclear explosion phenomenon discovered by the Divine Era mages was actually not a forbidden spell at all, but the result of a failed experiment. That failed experiment killed more than 3 mages in red robes, and everything related to the experiment was sealed. The impact of the experiment didn't disappear even after the end of the Divine Era, creating a large number of deformed creatures. The nuclear explosion phenomenon is the most terrifying and powerful material annihilation observed by humans in all records of the Divine Era, resembling the eruption of a small sun on the ground. It is much stronger than the previous nuclear explosion, with a core temperature that may exceed 10 million, close to the astronomical unit of billion. How could this be magic that humans can use during the period of magic tide decline? Nuclear explosion? Forbidden spell? Duke's soul fire shook violently. If he still had a jaw, it would probably be dislocated from the shock. Yes, Didn't the records mention that the Council had studied the release of the nuclear explosion forbidden spell? As a descendant of the Red Robe Council, Poincaré knew about that research. That's also why he considered the nuclear explosion the strongest forbidden spell of the Divine Era. However, all the records regarding the nuclear explosion were very confusing, and he didn't grasp the fundamental aspects of it. He still couldn't calculate a reasonable formula. There has never been any nuclear explosion forbidden spell, Duke firmly told his descendants. It was just a pipe dream. To cast the nuclear explosion forbidden spell, it would require the magic star to provide limitless magical support and increase the human hero-ranked magic pool by 100 times. It's just wishful thinking. Only a god can cast the nuclear explosion forbidden spell with a human body. That is a magic only gods can use, if that magic truly exists. Poincaré stood up. He had long had this question. Duke's provided data only matched his calculations. The human body cannot possibly generate the magical power required to cast a spell as powerful as a nuclear explosion. Chapter 12:15. During the time known as the period of magic decline, only a few warlocks retained the ability to cast spells, and magic itself was almost non-existent. This is because the fundamental principle of meditation for mages is that the magic power is so scarce that it cannot be driven by human mental strength. Even so, Poincaré was able to construct all known magical templates from the Divine Era using self-generated data. Anything that can be calculated, the Imperial Sage can compute for you. However, the calculation for the nuclear explosion forbidden spell is always incorrect, no matter how you estimate it. How can the human body contain the magical power required to unleash such a spell? According to his calculations, in order to cast a forbidden spell of the nuclear explosion level, the inside of a human body would need a structure similar to a miniature sun. Even the most powerful mages at the peak of the Divine Era have never achieved such a thing, or even had a theory for it. Then why does the nuclear explosion exist? Poincaré asked his ancestors, the former strongest mage in the continent's peak and the leader of the Red Robes Council. That is, the power of science. Duke's eyes flickered with a distant flame, as if he had returned to the time when he hosted the nuclear explosion experiment. Yes, that famous nuclear explosion experiment on the continent, hailed as one of the craziest failed experiments of the wizards, was his achievement, or rather, one of his failures. Originally, he wanted to find another extraordinary path for the wizards, a way to master the power to destroy heaven and earth without needing magic. But he failed. The path he discovered was beyond the grasp of any wizard. No one could control the power of a nuclear explosion, not even the red-robed wizard counselors who stood at the pinnacle of the continent. 3 red-robed counselors, almost on par with his strength, were obliterated in that nuclear explosion. The temperature at the center of the explosion exceeded tens of millions of degrees, a temperature where no living being could survive. That is not a power that can be controlled by a hero-ranked individual. Once unleashed, it would turn an area of several kilometers into a complete hell. The resulting shockwave could even spread dozens of kilometers away, and certain unseen curses could continue for hundreds or thousands of years, causing deformities and distortions in the surrounding organisms. The attempts of the red-robed wizards failed. This is not the power of magic, but rather a different kind of power that can alter the material world. The problem is, this power has no meaning for the continuation of wizardry. Unable to control, unable to extract, only able to unleash a destructive power that can destroy everything in an instant, and it requires extremely precious resources. Most importantly, it also erodes the physical bodies of the wizards, shortening their lifespan. Duke, who was in charge of this experiment, started rapidly aging after that experiment. He had no choice but to use forbidden methods to sustain his own body. Nuclear explosion, it was like a nightmare. Duke recalled the sight of the flames he saw at that time. It was supposed to be a magical experimental site built hundreds of meters underground, but it was completely overturned by a huge mushroom cloud. It was as if a volcano had erupted, and everything was destroyed. He was once one of his best friends, the second seat of the Red Robe Council, who swore to change the fate of weak wizards. But he turned into ashes within that mushroom cloud. It's not the power of magic? Poicaret's body trembled slightly. For someone who was usually indifferent, this was the first time he showed an excited expression. It was intuition that grasped the pulse of the era, and it gave him an explanation as to why Ein, who wasn't even 16, could control such power. It turns out it's not magic, but science. Yes. Do you really want this kind of weapon? Duke hesitated. His remaining conscience told him that the choices he would make next could change the world. Yes, the science of this world needs this kind of power, this ultimate weapon. If we have this kind of power, then we can achieve a limited balance. For this era, peace requires the power of nuclear explosions. Poicaret kept calculating and reasoning, finally reaching this result. If both the Leviathan Empire and the Sia Kingdom possess the ultimate weapon of nuclear explosions, then military balance can be achieved. The Leviathan Empire won't attack the Sia Kingdom, and the Sia Kingdom itself cannot prevent the expansion of the Leviathan Empire due to its size. Finally, the continent will form an axis with the Leviathan Empire as the main power, bringing about the era Ludwig XII hopes for. Weapons that can destroy everything sometimes become the dawn of peace. It may seem funny, but it is indeed a reasonable future calculated by Poicaret. Well, here you go. The underground cemetery will eventually leave this world. The future of this world doesn't belong to me, a deceased person, but to all of you. Once Duke learned about the ultimate goal of the underground cemetery, he also intended to leave this world and see the scenery beyond the starry sky. The future of Sia's world will ultimately be determined by the people of this era. Passing on the weapon of nuclear explosions to his descendants, allowing his offspring to have a place in this grand era, is the last thing his ancestors can do. As for what his descendants plan to do with this weapon, whether it's war or peace, it's their own choice. What is gone is gone. Even if the deceased return, they are no longer the masters of this world. The power of the underground cemetery feels out of place in this world. Duke has had suspicions since the beginning, and now he understands that this power comes from beyond the stars. During the experiment, a total of 3 weapons like this were created. One of them exploded during the first experiment, and the other 2. The method of use is: Duke spoke the secret code that has been passed down through his family for generations, revealing the activation password for the most destructive weapon ever created by Sia's world to Poicaret. What is the principle of creating it? Poicaret obtained what could be the world's most powerful weapon, but he was not so excited. He gazed intensely at his ancestors. Instead of ready-made weapons, what he wanted to know more was the principle of creating this kind of weapon, which was even more important than 100 of these ultimate weapons. Duke hesitated once again. He could foresee that if he told his descendants how to make this weapon, the future of the world would definitely undergo immense changes. That principle didn't belong to magic, but to science. When the second-ranked person at that time created this weapon, they enthusiastically described to him how this power, derived from the essence of matter, would bring about a brilliant future if used by the mages. Unfortunately, all the elites from their faction died in that nuclear explosion, almost as if they were buried along with this taboo. Chapter 12:16. When this power was discovered, the Council of Red Robes split into 3 factions. The emerging faction that supported the research of nuclear explosions and controlled this powerful force. This faction, led by the second-ranked member of the council at that time, mostly consisted of young, elite Red Robe mages. They were also a group of talented mages who emerged after the period of magic decline. Stay neutral and be cautious towards this new phenomenon's neutral faction. This group occupies the majority of the parliament, and they are curious about the innovative ideas of these newcomers. However, they're also worried if this new power can truly benefit humanity. The leader of this group is Duke, the highest chairman. Lastly, there is a completely opposing faction to this experiment. They believe that this kind of power destroys the tradition of wizards and will bring immense disaster. This traditional faction is mainly composed of warlocks and some ancient magical families. At the beginning of the experiment, the emerging faction had the upper hand. The main researchers studying this new power, nuclear explosion, disregarded the opposition from the traditional faction. They had confident reasons since they were known as the last miracle generation. Like a flicker of light, after the period of magic tide decline began, a group of exceptionally talented young boys and girls emerged in the human society, rivaling the brightest times of the divine era. They had grand visions and the courage to go all out, daring to break free from all restraints and questioning all authorities. After the period of magic tide decline officially began, they were the most unwilling to accept the status quo and were willing to pay any price to seek a path for the future. During that era, they illuminated the entire period and were hailed as the last miracle. If Duke wasn't the oldest and didn't possess the magical crown called the God Weapon for over 100 years, he wouldn't dare claim to be better than the second-ranking mage, let alone hold the position of the president of the Red Robe Mage Council for consecutive terms. Even so, he knew that his position as the president would eventually be taken over by the energetic second-ranking mage, a young man named Homer. It took Homer only 35 years to go from being a normal person to a hero-rank mage, and then almost reaching the pinnacle of hero-ranked as the 6th-ranked strongest mage. Duke, on the other hand, took a whole century to reach the same position. This was all thanks to Duke inheriting the God Weapon, the magical crown representing Sia's world, at the age of 50. He then spent 50 years practicing his magical healing ability with the God Weapon's super speed magic restoration power. When Homer proposed the nuclear research project and gathered a large group of young geniuses to start the project, Duke was already 150 years old. For a peak Red Robe mage, this age was still considered relatively young. Among the previous Red Robe mages, the longest living president after reaching the 6th rank passed away at the age of 500. However, looking at Homer and the group of young people around him, Duke felt old. The future belonged to these young people. With an appreciative gaze, Duke remained neutral, but secretly supported their bold experiments. Soon, the research made groundbreaking progress. Homer displayed talents that were completely unmatched for his age. From the initial discovery of the essence of matter all the way to creating the first prototype, it took him less than 7 years. Duke had also imagined what kind of future would appear if this power could really be used by wizards. That night, young Homer burst into the speaker's room with his drawings, excitedly depicting that shining future moment that Duke never forgot, even after he died. Homer told him that this power was not solely his own idea, but a reconstruction based on certain incomplete records that he acquired. The principles and operation of supporting a nuclear chain reaction are likely not creations of Sia's world civilization, but rather the crystallization of wisdom from a more advanced civilization. In other words, that civilization had already mastered the use of nuclear explosion power and had acquired the ability to travel among the stars, which accidentally led to these records falling onto the Earth of Sia's world. Since this power was not a mere fantasy, as long as one traces and studies these records in reverse, it is possible to find a method of using this power. From the incomplete records obtained from Homer, once the power of nuclear explosion can be utilized by humans, it could potentially create a brilliant civilization called science. In that era, even if the wizards lost their magical abilities, they would still become the ultimate masters. For Sia's world, which has entered a period of declining magical tides, this is the best choice. Duke agreed to support Homer's research and secretly provided funds and resources to accelerate Homer's progress. In the 7th year of obtaining those incomplete records, Homer happily told his teacher Duke that the original product of studying this power, using those records, had been created. That is the necessary key to open this big door, called the igniter, a wonderful thing. From those incomplete records, it can be known that in order to control this huge power that can change the material world, the igniter is necessary. Homer and his team created 3 of these igniters in one go and couldn't wait to witness the arrival of this new era. It was a great experiment destined to be recorded in human history, but no one expected the outcome of the experiment. The elites of the new era, the generation of the last miracle, gathered in the magic laboratory hundreds of meters deep underground, in a state of heightened vigilance, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the miracle. Duke, who secretly assisted his student as a neutral party, was also waiting for the glorious moment of his disciple's creation through a magic mirror in the wizard tower 10 kilometers away. If this experiment succeeds, he can rightfully pass on the position of the speaker and the inheritance of the god weapon, the magic star, to Homer. He has the spirit of innovation and creativity that he lacks, daring to say no to all traditions. The traditional knowledge of wizards could not change the future when the period of magic decline arrived, and wizards were destined to decline. Even if his experiment failed this time, and the lighter couldn't ignite as expected, it's okay. He still has plenty of time. Being young is their greatest advantage for the final miracle. Everyone can forgive their failures and look forward to seeing more results after learning from their mistakes. At that time, even the traditionalists who opposed this experiment couldn't anticipate what would happen next. The wizards of Sia's world had no idea about the concept of the lighter mentioned in the incomplete records of that civilization. Almost the entire generation of the final miracle in Sia's world gathered in the experimental field that day, excitedly watching the countdown on the lighter covered by a powerful magic array. Chapter 12:17. Everything seemed to have happened just yesterday. 10-9-8-7-6-5. A group of young men and women, full of energy and hope for the world's future, were gathered around the newly built ignition device. Their faces were filled with anticipation. Even from a distance of 10 kilometers, Duke, who was observing them with magic, believed that the world's future belonged to them. Whether they succeeded or failed, they certainly took a big step in history. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 ignition. Homer, the most outstanding disciple, created the ignition device and proudly activated the switch, initiating the beginning of that nightmare. What happened in the next second would forever be etched in Duke's heart, even millions of years later. The orange sun appeared. Although it was smaller, its core temperature exceeded millions of degrees, burning everything, devouring everything, destroying everything. Its radiance instantly broke through a magic barrier consisting of 36 layers, which was considered impenetrable even by the most powerful spells. None of the layers could withstand even a second in front of this miniature sun. His favorite student, Homer, the young people who were hailed as the last miracle of this era, fully supporting their experiment, witnessing firsthand the revolutionary members who were destined to be recorded in history. In that moment, everything turned to ashes and was devoured by the spreading orange sun. Even the bodies couldn't exist anymore, as the infinite orange light instantly destroyed the entire underground magical experiment ground, lifting hundreds of meters of rock layers and creating a huge mushroom cloud in this world. The resulting high temperature and shockwave evaporated everything within a few kilometers. Not even the Duke Mage Tower, which was located 10 kilometers away, could escape. It collapsed with less than 10 seconds of support. Duke, who was observing the experiment with a magic mirror, was blown away. If it weren't for the magic shield supported by the magic star, he would probably have suffered the same fate as his student Homer. The earth mourned, the sky trembled. In the moment when the small sun bloomed on the ground, everyone lost their sight and hearing. Within a 10-kilometer radius, only Duke survived, while the other owners of the wizard towers, without the magical crown called the god weapon, were not protected. The wizard towers were destroyed, and they lost their lives in the yellow spring. Even Duke, who survived, was penetrated by invisible particles of terror and suffered irreversible fatal injuries within a minute. All of this happened in less than a minute. The location of the underground experimental site now remained as a huge hollow. The edges of the hollow were filled with burnt glass-like powder. People couldn't even find any artifacts belonging to those wizards here. Duke remained in a coma for the next 3 days. His eardrums were shattered by terrifying sound waves. If it wasn't for the protection of the god weapon, he would not have been able to endure these 3 nightmare-like days and nights. The main members of the reformist faction were completely wiped out. In the end, the generation of miracles, before they could step onto their own stage in history, perished along with this nuclear explosion. The traditional faction, originally at a disadvantage, turned the tables and gained an absolute majority in the council. Even the neutral wizards sided with them one after another. Everyone felt a deep terror in their hearts about the accident caused by the ignition device. According to the later estimated data, this experimental accident caused the heaviest casualties for the Mage Council since the Divine Era and the Dragon War. The 2nd seat, 5th seat, 6th seat, 7th seat, 10th seat, 11th seat, and 12th seat of the Red Robe Council were all buried in the testing ground, with the oldest being 300 years old and the youngest only 16 years old. Known as the last miracle generation, entrusted with the future by countless people, even though they could accept the failure of this experiment, no one survived. After the accident, some insisted on continuing their research and even proposed the need for larger uninhabited areas to prevent similar accidents. If the explosion only resulted in this, perhaps this research would continue. Even though they lost the last miracle generation, there are still people who want to fulfill their unfinished wishes and continue on the path called science. It wasn't until the mages discovered that after the nuclear explosion, all the animals and plants within hundreds of kilometers began to undergo terrifying and distorted mutations. Some animals developed horrifying tumors on their bodies, and herbivores began to attack humans. Plants grew organs that they shouldn't have and showed signs of continuing mutation. After the nuclear explosion, something even more terrifying than direct casualties appeared: mutations that couldn't be reversed even with magic. Many wizards who were initially affected by the aftermath of the explosion didn't die immediately, but instead perished one by one over the next 100 days. Even Duke, the highest leader of the Red Robe Council with the protection of the Magic Star, couldn't escape this disaster. In the end, he had no choice but to resort to forbidden methods in order to survive. From then on, no one dared to restart nuclear experiments because most of the wizards who wanted to do so had died. The Red Robe Council suffered the loss of an entire generation of elites and over half of its members. The main reformists and neutral factions were almost completely wiped out. Ironically, the traditionalists were excluded from this experimental ignition because the reformists and neutrals joined forces. In order to prevent them from sabotaging this crucial experiment, several traditionalist council members weren't even allowed to enter the mountain range where the testing site was located. This actually kept them away from the accident. As the only member of the council who survived the nuclear accident, Duke was forced to make a difficult decision: abandoning the study of this power. Most of the technical information remained, but no one could understand what the data represented anymore. Homer's intelligence was a miracle that spanned across eras. Without him and the efforts of the last generation of miracle workers, the creation of the ignition device would be impossible. After losing Homer and the last generation of miracles, the Red Robe Council no longer had the power to carry out experiments of this scale. 2 well-built igniters were buried by him in a place known only to him. The Red Robe Council completely abandoned the path represented by nuclear explosions and instead began to study the mysterious phenomena of the underground cemetery. The remaining few reformists were also unable to restart nuclear explosion experiments and began to evolve in a different direction, continuing Homer's legacy and paving the way for science. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.